Welcome back to the Carp Chronicles podcast. We've got a very carpy chat for you today and a very carpy man. Jake Hughes joins us for a chat today. This is part of a new kind of, I don't know if series is the right word, but a new thing that we want to do called Local Legends, where basically I want to interview people that are, perhaps they're not in the limelight, they're not well known nationally, but they're well known locally, and they're getting amongst some, special carp, and they've got good stories to tell. I want to do some of those episodes and still do some Salmon Pete's episodes, and then still do some, bigger named guests as well. But these kind of chats are just inspire me to go out, grab the rods and go fishing. So hopefully they do the same for you as well. Just a little bit of history on Jake. Jake is a well-respected and very, very passionate angler who fishes off the beaten track for some incredible carp that you wouldn't see publicised elsewhere. He's also an artist, a very, very good artist, I might add, and he did the drawings for Kevin Nash's book, literally last minute, the night before it got published, I think. We talk about this in the episode, when he was just 17 years old, and that was, I think, 10 or 12 years ago, might be wrong on that, but a long time ago. So he's been doing art for a long, long time, and I know he wants to do a little bit more artwork in the industry. So if you want to look at what he can do, check out his Instagram accounts, which are at Jake the Heron and at Jake Hughes Art. It's not just carp art that he does all kinds of things, and he is very, very talented, so well worth checking that out. In the actual episode today, Jake shares stories on how he's fished for the toadless lever on Frogmore. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. It was kind of made famous by Terry Hearn. He was fishing on there since the age of 15. He also talks about big pit guesting adventures, big unknown, unfished pits that he's fished for. Run-ins with gypsies, whole loads of stuff. And he's a very natural, captivating talker, so I think you're all going to really, really enjoy this. It's a bit of a treat, to be honest with you. Before we jump into the episode, of course, brought to you by BP Milling. If you haven't already, you really need to try his pellets. They are actually very, very good, and it's a nice change to ring compared to the usual fish meal style pellets which we all use. Obviously BP Milling, they're all cereal based, very attractive to fish, very healthy for fish as well. So check out bpmilling.co.uk. You can grab 10% off your order with the code Chronicles10. As well as that, you need to go and check out his YouTube channel because he has some very, very interesting videos on there. I'm learning stuff from them. It's very different from, you do this to catch carp. It's more about the science behind carp and fisheries, how they work, oxygen cycles, weeds, things like that. So if you want to take a deeper look at the watercraft side of carp angling, definitely go and check out BP Milling's YouTube channel and give him a subscribe. I know he's got a long list of different videos that he's going to be publishing soon, and they are really, really good subjects, so I'm quite looking forward to it. So check out BP Milling on YouTube. Just lastly, let me squeeze this in. OptiBaits. If you are not using our products, you've got to kind of question yourself as to what you're doing, because in my opinion, these are the most unique products available to anglers. Couple of new products on the website which will go live today. As you listen to this, they will already be live, and that is wafters in our famous buku variety, as well as the warlocks. Both of those two are just catching so many fish right now, it's unreal. Yeah, get on them if you haven't already. Wafters will be in barrels. You can just click on the warlock section and the buku section, and you'll be able to select barrels from each of those. As well as that, long-awaited bait spray, which I've worked very, very hard on and I'm very proud of, to be honest with you. That is also available up on the website. It's called Choco Stim. Lots of good bits in that. There is a very natural chocolate kind of undertone to it, which I'll talk about at some point. And there's also a blend of amino acids and other feed stimulants in that liquid, so you can use it to spray on your hook bait, spray in your pot of pop-ups. You can use it any which way really, and it does switch the carp on very efficiently. So go ahead, check that out, optibaits.com. that is it for the intro. Let's jump in to this episode with Jake. Well, we actually had a little bit of a preamble chat before. I've left that in just so you get a bit of a feel for Jake and you can sort of find out what he's all about. But yeah, without further ado, enjoy this very carpy episode with Jake the Heron Hughes.
I got home at about 20 to 8 and I was just like, oh my God, I'm knackered, but I feel all right now. I had a smoothie, had some Coca-Cola, and now I've got a beer, so God knows what's going on in my stomach, but I'm feeling a lot better.
It's all good, dude.
A lot less tired.
Nervous at all, or are you all good?
I'm all right, not too bad. Yeah, I think it's, like I said, it was a little bit of excitement. It's just something you don't do every day, you know?
Yeah.
So we'll see when I start getting into stories and stuff. I think I'll be better when my other half stops watching me whilst making a snack or whatever she's doing. She's gonna disappear in a minute, but she's making toast. So
get her on the podcast, mate. She got any good stories or?
She's I would say she's she probably has got some good stories. I remember there was a storm once down the lake, and she's rocked up at 11:30 at night. It's a big public water in the middle of Milton Keynes, so it's a little bit dodgy. She's because there's a storm, she's worried about me. She's come at 11:30 at night, I'm asleep, and set up a pop-up tent next to me just to make sure I was all right. She's done a few nights on the bank, but she's not really interested, you know.
She sounds like a keeper, mate.
100%. Yeah,
you've done well there. Where do you live?
I currently live in Harpenden, but I'm originally from St Albans. It's only down the road from where I am now. I don't know if you know St Albans at all.
No, I know where it is, but I don't know. I don't.
Yeah, basically, if you look at the M25, one side you've got, so east you've got the Lee Valley, west you've got the Colne Valley, which is, I mean, obviously you know sort of them two sort of zones.
Yeah. Cool.
And then smack bang at the top you've got of the M25 is where I live. So I live half an hour away from two of the best sort of zones in the country, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a bad spot to be at all, is it?
No, it's a funny spot because you're sort of stuck between two areas that you've read about. You know, I've read about for many years and whatever. I'm not a big reader, but I have. You know, I've always known about the history and whatnot. But you just can't get on much of the waters, you know, which is a little bit of a nightmare. But at the same time, growing up and whatever, always walking around. Sort of. I mean, I remember walking the Mere when I was about 16. Before the Black Mirror had died, and I no interest in fishing there whatsoever. I wasn't good enough, didn't drive, but a mate had just passed his test, so we went out and looked. So yeah, things like that, it's wicked for that, you know, inspiration if you like, getting the sort of yourself fired up.
Did you ever see the Black Mirror or
no,
Commons or anything?
It was, we walked the High Bank one winter. We were supposed to go to a carp show. I can't remember which one it was. And we'd never done a carp show before, and I still haven't now. And last minute, I stayed in Essex in Chigwell, a friend of mine's house, with a couple of boys I grew up fishing with down Frogmore, and a mate who was a non-angler. And last minute, we just all decided, let's go round some lakes in the Colne Valley. So we walked the High Bank of the Mere. You know, it's freezing cold. The shows are in the winter. It was just a buzz, you know. You're looking at the whole lake. It's cold. We're never going to see nothing. We were all. It was a bit of a heavy night the night before as well. With I think there was a couple of beers, kebabs, and maybe spliffs. I didn't smoke, but spliffs involved. We walked there. I'm glad we didn't go to the show because I couldn't talk to anyone really. I don't think the next day. We walked around the Dark Park. Walked around Sheepwalk and a few other. I might have walked around Ellis, but I can't remember. But yeah, I mean, you know, some proper bits of water. I haven't fished any of them, but just, you know, great to get round there, I suppose.
I often think I'd like to just sort of take a couple of weeks out from work at some point. It'll probably never happen, and just go around all these sort of, you know, these historic waters that we've all read about, and sort of, you know, like, so you build up a picture in your mind of what that lake's going to be like, don't you? And I imagine like 9 times out of 10, it's probably going to disappoint, but it'd still be amazing just to kind of go around these places. I mean, 2 weeks probably ain't enough. There's so many bits of water out there.
100%. But I think, I think you can do a good bit in a day. We done a lot that day. I can't remember if it was that day or another day, but we done Raisbury. And when I say we walked Raisbury, we had a look at a couple of. There was a gypsy site on one of the roads. Yeah. I don't know Raisbury at all, to be honest with you. I can't remember if I could see the dredger from there or not. But looking out, it was just like the pinnacle at the time. I can't remember what was still about back then because I don't remember the year, but it was about probably 13 years ago. So it was, it still had some real good ones in it. Low slot, it's not what it is now, And seeing it back then certainly got the juices flowing,
Mm. Yeah, no doubt. We're sort of, this is like all good stuff to leave in the intro. Is there there's just a bit of background noise, Jake? Is there something going on in the back there?
What is it? Is it like a crackle or something?
Yeah, it sounds like a Jack Russell on a wooden floor.
Is that any better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that?
I was playing on YouTube. I was playing a fire going. It's like I haven't got a fire and I want one. So it's just a fire crackling. It's just I suppose it was a bit relaxing, but I can do without it.
It's probably better without it. Yeah,
100%. Yeah, I don't know what you can hear with these headphones.
Yeah,
but
very Terry Hearn, mate, in front of your virtual fire.
Yeah, that's new. That's too new school for Hearn. I think. I doubt he's got a TV with YouTube on it. But that's as far as I get to a fire. So maybe one day.
I think we'll just keep going. I think this is quite a good intro.
Yeah. Go for
I think we'll loop back round to how you got into angling. I know that's something that you want to discuss. But I mean, life for you at the minute, Jake, just to sort of paint a picture. What does angling life look for you like? Sorry, I'll say that again. What does angling life look like for you?
In terms of the present, it's pretty much been non-existent for about 6 weeks. I know that's not a long time, but I'm clucking right now. But normally my fishing is incredibly intense. It's 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off. It's a little bit like that. As much as I can physically get away with without my missus saying, right, get out, I've had enough of you. So I will, let's say it's March. I'll do as much as I can in sort of March, April, maybe the start of May. And that's 5 a.m. walks before work, baiting up. Midnight walks after work. If my missus is asleep, I ring her. She don't answer. I think, well, she's fallen asleep, putting the little one to bed. I get straight round the lake, just as much as I can get away with without affecting my family life too much, because, if I had to weigh it up, what's more important, my little one and my missus, or fishing? They win every time. However, I do get a little bit miserable if I don't go, and if my head's not stuck into it, But yeah, just intense spells, I guess, trying to do the very best I can. Sometimes it's enough and sometimes it isn't. And, recently it was, but there's been plenty of other times where tail between your legs, But it's just very intense whilst trying to balance everything, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, are you typically doing short overnight sessions or are you doing longer sessions in chunks? How's it going?
Since moving house, which was, when was that, August, my sessions were pretty much anywhere between 11 at night and 3 a.m. is when I'd get down to the lake. And that's because I'm painting, decorating, working, sorting the little one out, whatever it might be. And then, you've got to sort your gear out. And that's sort of, that was, I've been fishing a little lake, so I've been able to do it. I think it's about 6 acres or so. And then, leaving at 7, 8, 9 in the morning. So, quick overnighters, I guess. But there are other times where I'm doing sort of longer sessions, I guess. And that's sort of a day, a night, and half a day, something like that. I'm normally working on the day of my session, on the day I leave, and on the day I get back, I'm normally working. So it's not, it's enough for me as long as I can bait up or as long as I can walk around that lake. If I can't do that, then I do get a little bit like, well, what's the point of this, And that's why I do the intense spells. If it doesn't align with me fishing, I won't do it. Even though I really want to, You know, like I said, there's a lot more going on in life. So, and it's more of a treat as well when I do that, you know.
I was saying something really similar to my girlfriend the other day. Like, when I go fishing, I want everything else in my life to be like lined up.
Yeah.
But it's like when I was younger, I probably everything, in fact, nothing, very little in my life was lined up, to be honest. But I was just like fishing. And I didn't care about anything else. Now, I think you come to an age, maybe not all of us do, but some of us certainly. And it's like, no, I need to make sure like my home life, that's all good and catered for, so I can go to the bank, fish, get my fix, but without feeling guilty like I should be doing something else.
100%. You know, and I think what distinguishes someone, let's say like myself, to an angler that is catching all of them. I think they are willing to push the limit so far, and they might still balance it, but they make sure that their job is in play for their session and their misses, you know, and the kids, maybe they're not having them or whatever. And I feel like when I met my missus, I weren't fishing at the time, and that sort of took over, and then the fishing come back. I had a long break from fishing, so it's the whole time it's been trying to sort of squeeze in what I can. And I have at times I've like when I was doing the house up, I was trying to go fishing and that's why I was going at 3 a.m. or whatever. I needed to go. I think it was very important for me. I had a lot of success as well, considering, but yeah, it really took its toll on me, that the fishing. Then, you know, I was like a shadow of my former self after that. Whereas May this year, you know, it was a far better balance, far more enjoyable, and yeah, I feel like that's maybe how I got the job done recently.
So what, you were getting to the lake at potentially 3 o'clock, 3 a.m., 3 in the morning, and then how long were you fishing for?
Fishing until, well, normally I fish in one rod. I'll give you a little bit of background. So I was fishing a spot. There was a cave in a massive snag line in a little out of bounds sort of zone. And this cave, you could cast to it. And you know, I cast it once, I caught one, but the lake itself is relatively low stock. It's not the lowest stock in the world, but they're tricky. There's crayfish in there. They get angled for all the time. There's a high turnaround of anglers in there. And there's probably 35, 45 carp in 6 acres. So it's not massively low stock, but they are tricky. And a lot, you know, probably half of them are stockies, which, no disrespect, but that's not what I was there for. And what I was doing was I was putting a little nightlight on a baiting pole, shoving it in through, going around the out of bounds down the bank, shoving it through so I could see where it was, casting over it, dragging it back through, and dropping the rig right in the edge. So running around there doing that. So I knew I was fishing perfectly, and I don't think anyone else would do that. And that's why I was willing to go down there at 3 a.m. because I thought, well, I've got I can't do that casting, you know. It's just so much better to do it that way. And if I couldn't do it like that, I probably wouldn't have fished, because I wouldn't have been fishing effectively. And I'd have to know that and I was pre-baiting the spot as well, which helped. But yeah, otherwise I wouldn't do it. I'd just stay at home.
Yeah, that's it, mate. That is it. Before we jump in any further, I always forget this. Tipple of the episode. Are you joining us for a drink, Jake?
Yeah, it's not something I do very often, but I've got a couple of Estrellas, and I've got 3 Red Stripes, just old beers that have been stuck in my fridge for a long time. But I'm more than happy to have a few with you.
Good choice, mate. Good choice. I do like an Estrella. I like a Red Stripe for old time's sake as well.
And you know, I've done a little holiday in Jamaica, and we lived off of that and their finest herbs over there. So yeah, it reminds me of good times over there, you know.
Yeah, nice, mate. Pete, what are you on?
Yeah, nothing fancy. On the lagers as well. Just got a couple of Budweisers.
Nice. I'm bucking the trend. You peasants. I'm on the wine, actually.
Right.
I'm shedding some pounds. I'm getting married soon, so I need to sort myself out and lose a little bit of weight. So yeah, I'm on the. I've got an Argentinian Malbec. It's just the basic one from Marks and Spencer's, just their own one. Nothing
that'll do me. That'll do me. The only thing is I'll be battered if I was drinking red wine on this podcast, you know.
Well,
Couple
mate,
of hours of drinking that.
Sam will be.
I haven't drunk for a while. And I haven't drunk for a while. So and I'm eating like super clean at the minute. And I reckon this is going to go right to my head. But there we go.
But this is the thing, Jake. Sam, what you got for little chasers? Because I know when that bottle of wine's gone, you're going to be a thirsty man.
Jesus.
We've got this drinks globe type thing. It's literally a globe that you can spin, but it's like a drinks cabinet. Pete, you've seen it, I think, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
We've been filling it up with like all sorts of different stuff. So the danger is that actually once I drink this, I've got so much to go at, which is not good. Not? Yeah, it's not good. No, it's not. I'll tell you why not, because it ends up messy, doesn't it, Pete?
I'm sure that
we'll finish recording and then we'll be on the phone for a few hours talking about carp stuff, just getting battered, and it's ridiculous.
I'll be more battered than you on 5 beers than you'll be on all of that, I guarantee you.
Fair enough, mate. I mean, there's so much to talk about. Obviously, you know, you're not someone who's under the spotlight, not necessarily a well-known guy, but you've got some very interesting angling tales to tell, I know. And as well as that, obviously, your art plays a big sort of part in your life. I definitely want to talk about that. But I guess we'll kind of lead on to that later. I know you wanted to talk about your earlier years in fishing, how it all sort of came about, and what happened there. And I know it's a little bit cliche to kind of have that sort of at the beginning, but I know you've got some good juicy bits to reveal with that. So, I mean, what were the early years like for you?
Well, I suppose, I mean, you know, the early years for me, they lead on to everything else, but you know, they were. I didn't have someone in my family fishing. Do you remember Rex Hunt?
Yeah.
I used to sit and watch him with my granddad. He weren't a fisherman. He's one of them. Discovery was always on, and or National Geographic or whatever it was. And I used to sit there and watch them with him. 3-4 years old, I remember it as clear as anything. And I would. I become obsessed with fishing, and I'd get a stick with a bit of string and sit in their flower bed. In the garden, there was like a flower bed. It almost looked like a pond where it was raised. And I'd sit there for hours just pretending to fish. And it was only until my nan took me at about 7 years old, so 3 or 4 years later. She weren't a fisherman. She'd never been. We caught nothing. We caught my little brother, actually. My nan had cast out and hooked my little brother's finger. He was probably 3 at the time. It was carnage. But that sort of kicked it off for me. We didn't go much. I went with my stepdad twice. So he was my stepdad. My mum, she likes engagements, and I went with my stepdad twice. And I was a little bit older then. I was probably 10, so I'd probably been 5 times with my nan. Still hadn't caught nothing on the River Lee, and 5 times with my stepdad, just fishing for roach and whatnot. And I'd actually caught something, netting for sticklebacks and stuff like that. But it was when my second cousin's granddad finally allowed me to go with them. My second cousin, me and him, we grew up. We were such good friends, but we never had been fishing together. Went to school together and everything. And he agreed to take me. He had a little courser. He was blind as a bat. He nearly killed us on every trip. But I'd lay down in the back because the seats were all down. And I'd say a little prayer. I'm not religious, but I'd say a prayer every time because he'd always hit something. And he was a character, a proper character. His name was Alan. And he used to take us down some of the Verulam angling waters. So waters, it was a club. And the first one was Smallford. So it was a sort of a gravel pit of 30 foot. And that's where we just used to fish for bream. And it was only when I'd caught from one of the other Verulam waters a fish that required 2 hands to hold it for a photograph that I wanted to fish for carp. It was a barbel from the River Lee. And I had loads of carp magazines. And me and my mate, we used his paper round money to get some ready-made ESP carp rigs. I think they were Raptor hooks or whatever, and some lead clips. And I just remember thinking I was Terry Earn at the time, going down the lake with hair rigs, and it was snowing on our first trip. Smallford was tricky, you had to it was an egg box. You had to put your rigs on spots, really, if you were casting. Otherwise, you're in 20 foot, silty and horrible. It was snowing, and my mate cast a rod out for me. That's how inexperienced I was at the time. And we walked around the lake. We were shooting a little catapult, and we were trying to shoot rabbits, I think. And my rod ripped off, so I had to run about a mile to the rod. I landed in an 11-pound common, and since that day, I haven't done anything else really, just carp fishing. Obsessed since that day. Everything changed there and then. I went from wanting to fish for sort of, progressively bigger fish, bream and whatever else at points. And yeah, since then I haven't wanted to fish for anything else. I'm not into all this big perch in the winter and big pike and all of that. Not at all. It's all about the carp for me.
Yeah, fair enough, mate. Like, obviously, moving on from there, what was your? You don't have to name it, but what would you class as your first sort of proper carp water? Meaning that you're out there targeting some specific fish, maybe, or it's a bit more than just like a day ticket type fishing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from there we started. Although I was in my head a carp angler, we'd done a bit of time down Frogmore. It's known as Moor Mill nowadays, but it's what held the famous toadless leather, sort of known as Heather's little sister. Very similar to Heather, a little bit smaller, 40-pounder, very old. And started fishing down there for the tench. There's 4 lakes on the complex. Bit of a funny area, the occasional car burnt out in the car park, the occasional crackhead trying to rob your alarms, the very regular gypsies trying to cause carnage. And we started fishing there for the tench. A lake next door, the Island Pit, had recently been stocked with some sort of funky looking carp. I mean, they'd sort of come from all over, really, wherever they could get them from. So there was a real sort of funny stock of a bit of everything. Some were battered, some were lovely. Started fishing there. And, it was weedy, it was clear. There were probably 100 carp in there. Had about, 15 or 20 islands on it. That's why it's called the Island Lake. We weren't feeling for drops or anything like that, but we seemed to do better than the boys who were doing the nights on there, doing day sessions, getting dropped off or however we were getting down there. Sometimes we'd cycle. And we were just casting tight to islands, I guess, because they were tight to islands. They were relatively clear areas where the weed hadn't got up yet. And we'd have 2 or 3 a session sometimes. And from there, started fishing another lake, the School Pit, very small lake, probably had 10 carp in there, caught the big one out of there. It wasn't under the ice, but the lake was like 90% frozen. And I wanted to get rid of some bait, so I threw it off of an island just to get rid of it. I didn't want to take it home. And all week I was like, they're going to get on that. Got back on the island a week later. I wanted to do a night, but my mum wouldn't let me. We were like 13, sleeping on the floor. I was alone most of the time. And it was dodgy as well. I'd been robbed before that down there. So sleeping on the floor by yourself, it was scary. She said, no, you're not doing a night. So I went down there, caught I lowered a rig down before the bag had melted. I caught the big one out the School Pit. It was a real old one. I'd seen photos of it from years previous, and I think it hadn't done a capture for about 5 years. And then it was like, well, there's nothing really else to do on this sort of complex, if you like. So I moved on to the leather pit where the toadless leather lived, and I think I was about 15 by then. I had no money, no bait. Used to ask people for putty in the swim next door or whatever, and I was on pretty much a circuit water. 11 carp, very tricky, lots of finger bays and whatnot for them to sort of hide in. And also there was sort of a couple of swims that done fish, and they were always stitched up. But I think the first year I'd done nothing. In the second year, I'd caught the big common and a few others. It was that was my first proper carp water. Bumping into sort of local legends as well. And some some people from further afield. I mean, as you know, obviously Hearn caught the toadless lever 6-7 years previous or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was like our little Yatey, that complex, because we'd read about Yatey. I didn't quite understand it, but we knew there was something special in all the lakes, and we were fishing for them at a very young age. We were friends with all the locals, and we absolutely loved it. And I think if I fished, because up to this point I hadn't really fished any day tickets, and if I'd had fished day tickets, maybe the angling would have gone in another direction. But fortunately it didn't. I'm really chuffed it didn't, because I think I would have stopped fishing. And we learnt the hard way, definitely, because even on the easier Lakely Island Pit, 100 fish, you're fishing snags, there's crayfish, there's gypsies trying to rob you, dodgy people around at night. So it hardened us up, that's for sure.
See, I think it was early 2000. Well, in fact, I know it was early 2000s that Terry caught the lever, the toadless lever. What year were you on there, or what year did you start fishing it?
I started on there about 2006. So I wasn't carp fishing it at that point. 2008 is when I started carp fishing it.
Right. What were you fishing for before?
Pretty much everything. I mean, I was there for the carp in my head, but being limited to fishing next door to an old boy, our sort of adult, if you like, we were so young. We fished for tench, roach, pike, depended on the day really, but whenever I could get the carp rods out, I would. And it weren't long. I think it's about 7 or 8 months until I was down there by myself doing the nights. I weren't relying on him anymore, on my mate's granddad. I was getting my nan to take me. My mum didn't drive, so it'd be, right, when you finish work, get me down that lake, She weren't happy about it, but this is the thing. I wasn't doing much time. I was doing overnighters still back then. It'd be get down there Friday in the dark, get home sort of Saturday early afternoon. It's not ideal, is it really? But
no, but you're in at the deep end from an early age. Then what were you, like 14, and you were fishing Frogmore? That's pretty hardcore, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I would say so. I didn't know it at the time, but fishing the lever pit at 15. I mean, a mate of mine caught the lever at 15 years old, and he was pretty much like a god at the time, to me, because he's from Essex, and he made his way down there. His mum gave him lifts, and he managed to do it. He caught arguably one of the best, if you like. I would say one of the best, because it was so dear to my heart. And he done it as a kid. It's monumental, really. But just to catch one of them fish was enough for me. And doing it, and doing better than some of the boys on there. There were blokes doing weekends, and I was doing a Saturday night, and they were doing a whole weekend, and they were baiting, and they had, and they had a lot of the resources I've got now. But I didn't have that back then. I bet my mate didn't have it back then. We were reliant on paper round money and skiving off of our paper rounds on a Saturday just to do our fishing, getting in trouble with the bloke as well. There was plenty of scared sort of Monday mornings going to do that paper round because you should have been there. But it bought me every single bit of gear that I owned at the time. I had a couple of Terry rods, no spot and marker, nothing like that. A throwing stick and a couple of tawnies and a dodgy old net that when the gypsies down there robbed me, they gave me some bits because they felt sorry for me a little while later. So I ended up with a better net than I should have had, a better mat. They nicked some bait off of a friend of mine, and when they found out it was me they robbed in the dark, they gave me his bait. It was ridiculous down there. It was like the Wild Wild West, honestly. I haven't fished anywhere like it since. I fished some dodgy waters, but nothing like that. It was ridiculous. We shouldn't have been down there. I used to ring my mum and say, yeah, I'm with Figgy, I'm with John, I'm with him, them, making up names. Reality was I was down there by myself on the floor, shitting my pants, but it was worth it, So they were the best days of my life, really, think about fishing-wise, because we were so innocent to it all. And it was, you know, it was in the summer holidays before I was doing the nights. I was doing day sessions, and yeah, it was like a paradise. You know, crystal clear water, loads of mare's tail weed, like a football pitch, and yeah, seeing monsters swimming through it. It's not really, it's nothing I'd experienced before that, and it's everything I look for in my fishing to this day. So, you know, clearly it had a massive effect on the way I've gone with my angling now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're cutting your teeth on a water like that, like, how can it not have a pretty profound effect on you? And you probably became a good angler pretty damn quick, because you've obviously got to contend with the weed, the nature of the lake, and obviously everything else. Your setup, mate, sounds all right for a kid on a paper round.
I used to do 6 a day.
And hands, mate, that's all right.
I used to do 6 a day, so it was ridiculous. But yeah, there was a bloke down there, Steve, known as Stella Man. There's a lot of characters down there, and he was called Stella Man because he was a man who loved Stella, and he caught his fair share, but he was always on the Stellas. Just that was his night out for the week. You know, he was a family man during the week, and yeah, he sold me some rods on the cheap. I think he was doing me a favour. And then there was a bloke on CMEX at the time who done me my tawnies for 90 quid a piece. You can't get them now for,
Jeez.
you know, they're silly money now, aren't they? But back then they weren't. And yeah, so, you know, 6 paper rounds was well worth it, and the trouble that come with it.
Yeah, mate, I fish with tawnies, so like you were doing all right. That's good enough for me.
Yeah, I still do now.
Oh,
That, you know, yeah, I don't think I could use anything else. I tried, but yeah, always go back to them.
Bulletproof, yeah. What? So, I mean, in terms, you're doing nights. You mentioned just sleeping on the floor. In fact, I've spoke to you before, so I know. You were just literally, when you say sleeping on the floor, you were sleeping on the floor, weren't you? Didn't have a brolly or anything like that?
I had a diver. This is going to sound ridiculous now, but what I used to do was I would, until I had enough money for my brolly, I would slum it in the front of someone's brolly. You know, that's what I would do, in a sleeping bag. But it wasn't a warm sleeping bag. I did do nights in the winter on the floor, especially over Smallford. Yeah, I bought myself a Daiwa Mission brolly. They were about 50 quid back then, the cheapest one I could get. Yeah. There was no internet for fishing gear back then. I can't remember there being any websites. And you just used to go to the fishing magazine and order it through there. So I got my brolly, and then there was a bloke down there. I remember fishing. He was on the leather pit, and he'd done very well on the leather pit. He never caught the leather, but he ended up womanizing for a long time, probably just before he was about to catch it. And one day he found out I was sleeping on the floor, and he said, "I'm going to take you to Johnson Ross, and I'm going to buy you a bed chair." And yeah, I remember he one day just rocks up at late with a brand new one. He didn't actually take me to the shop. And yeah, that's what the place was like. You know, it was a family. It brought a tear to my eye at the time. I couldn't believe it. I was gobsmacked. Probably the nicest thing anyone had done for me, you know. Yeah. And then I was on a bed chair. You know, it was great. It was like going on holiday every time I fished. Better than the bed at home. So it was a result.
What was that guy's name? Do you want to name him?
Yeah, Tom Carey. He doesn't really fish nowadays, but he, you know, he was like all of us, a little bit older, but he was like all of us down there. He cut his teeth on there, I guess. He'd fished some other sort of local waters and done well. And yeah, done far better than I had. He again played a big part in my fishing, without doubt.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. So, from there, you said you obviously didn't manage to get a toadless, unfortunately, but you got between some of the fish, some of the A team, so to speak, or was it just the kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I caught it was 11 carp. Everything was overshadowed by this big fat grey leather that was 40 whatever years old when Hearn caught it, let alone 5 or 6, 7 years later, 8 years when we were fishing for it. It was a mid-40. The second in command was a high 20, you know. But for me at the time, my biggest fish was the big one at the school pit, 23-pounder. I'd done some proper fishing, but I hadn't caught any proper fish. So on my second night of the year, I pre-baited a spot in the edge, And I used to wear fire waders all the time. Ian Bailey was fishing it back then. Works for Corder, really nice bloke, and he named me the Heron. That's where the name comes from. Because I used to walk around my fire waders. I'm 6'6". I'm skinny, so I've clearly looked like a heron. And I baited a little spot in this bay, caught the big common, which was 26.12. It's now a mid-30, I think. But it was old back then. It was named after one of the boys who used to fish it, who unfortunately died. He caught it, obviously. And I caught that one. A week later, I caught another one. And that year I done well. I had quite a few. I know I'd done better than most people on there. And I think more than anything, it was just being enthusiastic and seeing it with a fresh set of eyes. I still didn't really know how to fish, if you like. These boys were all better anglers than me. But I think that's all it was seeing it from a different angle, I suppose. Fishing from in a different way. I was fishing from in the weed with naked choddies, and I was fishing. I was stalking them as well. So I think these boys were sort of setting up camp, and it was the right way to catch that lever, without a doubt. And I was fishing for fish. I was fishing for carp, and I think the buzz that I got out of catching that 26.12 common was probably greater than some of the captures of the lever. I'd witnessed it come out, and some people were chuffed, and some people it wasn't big enough for them, and it wasn't the top weight or whatever. Most people were over the moon, don't get me wrong, and I can't blame. It did drop in weight when it got older, so I can't blame them for feeling that way. But for me, it wasn't all about that lever. It was about all of them carp in that lake. By the time I'd sort of probably got good enough to catch it and understood the way I was going to catch it, I'd fallen out of love with it, started sort of not getting up to no good, but going out and having a laugh and whatnot, and I had a little break from fishing after that.
And when you did come back, did you go back to Frogmore, or did you go elsewhere?
My nan had sold all my gear to cut hair, so I needed to get a proper job. I was told I could have. My life could have gone two ways at that point, because I was so in love with the fishing. A bloke called Paul Hill, who was the fishery manager down the complex, had said to me, look, a bloke called Roy, he lives in France. You go and run his lake, bailiff it, help people catch fish, throw their dinners at them, whatever you've got to do. Do you fancy it? It's a year. Well, it's 9 months of the year. I was like, yeah, 100%. But my mum said, no, you've got to do sixth form and you've got to get a job. And I understand it totally. But I ended up learning how to cut hair, and sold all my gear to fund the cutting hair. Basically, I had some nice fishing gear that was sort of it went up in value a little bit, and I got a bit better money for it. And while I was learning, I needed money to eat while I was at work and whatever. And it totally changed everything for me there and then. I thought, well, money was fun coupons after that. It wasn't bait or reels or bloody hooks or whatever. It was beers after that, and clothes and whatever. And everything sort of changed from there. After that, because we'd fished all over whilst fishing Frogmore, fished Glen Faber, done a night on Language, which is known as Heartbreak Lake, done a bit here, there and everywhere. So we'd done loads really, sort of for our age up, if you like. But I had a big break. I went out a lot, lots of scraps. I'm not good at fighting at all, and I learned that the hard way. Lots of broken noses and chipped teeth, lots of beers. And then, met I remember saying one day, I said, right, I'm ready now to settle down. I need a missus. I've never had one before, really. And a week later, my brother, he's gay, so he's got loads of girl mates. He said, oh, there's a girl at work you'd like. I gate crashed a party they were all at, and she fell for me there and then. And after being with her for about 6 months, I was like, right, it's fishing time now. So I got on to a lake we'll call the Otter Lake. I don't really know what else to call it, but I don't want to name it.
I know the lake, don't I? It's the one.
Yeah. It's a 70-ish acre lake, big out of bounds, 10-acre island in the middle. probably 25 carp in it, but they were tricky because unless you've got a southwesterly, they're always 200 yards away or whatever.
Yeah.
And getting 200 yards, getting a rig 200 yards, that's not easy. So I had to wait for the weather. And I was fishing mono back then. And I suffered 3 cut-offs fairly quickly in good weather. Obviously, I was like, right, braid time now. Got on the braid and suffered 5 hook pulls. It was ridiculous, But picking a water of such sort of magnitude, I guess, a water that I'd stumbled across it. I was supposed to be fishing somewhere else, and me and a mate had drove up north to look at this place. And whilst walking to that lake, it was 100 acres, but a better stock. It probably had 200 carp in it. We walked past another lake, and there and then I was just like, well, I'm fishing here. Fuck the other one. I started fishing it there and then, and lots of blanks. That first summer, very weedy. And I know why I didn't do well. So, lost lots of fish. And then went on to the reservoir after that. Didn't catch anything, basically. I was really frustrated as well, like very frustrated. I was convinced that I had no confidence in, because I hadn't caught a carp in many years, apart from the odd French trip and the odd social. And that's when I got on the reservoir. And I just needed a change there and then. That lake, the Otter Lake, I remember on our first session, I'm looking at the top of a brolly, the wind's going nuts, rods have been wiped out by swans, and then I can just see clouds. The wind has literally ripped the brolly away and torn it to shreds, and we're going home at 3 a.m. And that weren't the first time that happened on there. A 10-mile-an-hour wind on there, because it was so flat, the local area, it was like a 30-mile-an-hour wind, and this was, I think it was 50 mile an hour or something ridiculous. It beat me up, that place, the first stint on there. I'd never suffered a migraine in my life, but there was a sewage thingy nearby. I had 3 migraines in 3 sessions, head in the grass, eyes closed, may as well have been at home. So I thought, right, I need to get out of here. And I went to the reservoir shortly after that.
And then did you, when you say you were, obviously I know bits about your angling, but I don't know that much. When you say you went there shortly after, was this just like one session on the Otter Pit and then on to there, or?
I did a whole summer from June the 16th until September. I done that whole time on there.
Right.
I was working at the time 5 or 6 days, depending on the week. So I was racing up the motorway and getting there. But I was getting bites, but I just wasn't landing them, if the conditions were right. There was lots of blanks, but I was getting bites. And I was doing a night a week, and I was doing a bit of baiting here and there. That stint, I caught nothing. And I don't know, I might have done 15 nights or something, which, isn't loads, but it was enough for me to say, right, fuck this, I'm gone, because I was so frustrated.
Yeah. And then the lake that you went on to, we'll come to that in a bit. You then came back to Otter Pit, didn't you? Later down the line.
I come back after a bit of success on a few waters, actually, and I got a dodgy old Range Rover, which I'd actually bought for another lake in the Colne Valley because it was a bit off-road. And I wanted a Defender, but I couldn't afford one. So I got this Range Rover, picked my mate up who had never been down there, and he fell in love straight away. And we see him showing on the end of a wind. It was unbelievable. Didn't check the weather, nothing, just luck. Cast the rig out, and within 20 minutes, I had a high 20 common in the net. And after that, it still beat me up, don't get me wrong. I think I'd lost one that night and then got a migraine and didn't get the rods back out. I just couldn't open my eyes. Head was buried in the bed all night. My mate had the worst social of his life, my photographer when I first got there, and then he'd done the off. So I remember my missus coming down to walk the dog, even though it's not local. And I didn't talk to her because I was, my head was in the grass.
Sorry to interrupt. This is like a regular thing, this headache from the lake.
It was when there was a certain wind. The wind had blown, I think, there was always a smell. It's from the sewage. And the wind had blown the horrible air, in the sort of area where I was fishing, I think. I'd never had a migraine before or after. I don't suffer from headaches. But this is what I mean. This lake, it felt like it was cursed. There was an old boy who died down there. He was well known. He was one of the only people I've ever heard of to fish this lake. But the boys on a lake nearby knew him, and he was a bit of a legend, I guess. I can't even remember the bloke's name. And there was a little memorial thing for him there, and I always felt like it was a bit eerie at night. Now, Frogmore was the same. A friend of mine's. I won't go into that actually because that might be a bit personal. But the old boy had died, and I felt like I don't believe in that stuff. But when it's late at night and you haven't slept, you do a little bit, and I felt like it was a bit cursed. Everything went wrong. There was one other bloke who fished it regularly. I think he had a couple in 3 or 4 years or whatever, and he said the same thing. He was like, "Yeah, this place, I don't know what it is, but it beats you up bad, whether it's the weather or some weird occurrences or getting stuck in the mud, or there was so many different things that happened down there. A 24-hour bike ride when I wanted to get a rod out at 200 yards, and I'm not casting, let's put it that way. I won't say any more than that. So I weren't fishing. It's just silly things like it was every bloody week that these things were happening. I think that's why I'd had enough. But when I started catching them, it was fairly consistent, and I made sure I got down there when the moons and the weather had aligned with each other, so I didn't give it too much time, and I started catching them. Choddies, 90 yards, getting in the water and just chucking as far as I could into the end of that wind with braid. It weren't easy, but when you could get on them, you catch them straight away.
Yeah, just getting into the nitty gritty of it a bit more, because this kind of fishing will appeal to, I would presume, most of our listeners. What do you think was the turning point for you? Like, was there any big sort of aha moment, or is it literally just sort of like going for it? Let's find them, just bang it.
The turning point was I think it was confidence. It was going elsewhere and fishing somewhere on paper just as hard, but somewhere maybe more suited to my angling, and then just thinking, well, they're only carp, and you've got to get on them. It's as simple as that. You're not going to catch a fish in a lake that is 70 acres or whatever it was with 40 acres out of bounds when the wind's hacking in the other direction. You're not going to do it. And I would fish there no matter what. I'd be there. So now I just fished it when the conditions were spot on. I didn't waste any more time. If I was fishing and the weather weren't right, I'd be elsewhere. I'd get a couple of tickets on the go at the same time for me. And that was the turning point. And then catching one, once you've caught one, it just seems to flow from there. And once I had one in the net, I learned, for example, if they're going towards the Norfolk Reeds, which stretch 40, 50 yards into the lake, let them go in there. You're on braid. Don't try and stop them. If you've got to jump in that lake and wade round and nearly fill your waders up, it's worth it for one of them fish. They probably, most of them hadn't seen hooks. I'd seen a photograph of one fish from there, and it was the big one, but years before when it wasn't so big. And that's sort of what kept me going. I didn't know whether it was in there because I never saw it until the day I caught it. But I'd say, the turning point was confidence, without a doubt.
Do you remember your first fish out of there? I'm sure you do.
Yeah, the first fish was the feeling was unbelievable. It wasn't the biggest fish I've ever caught, but the battle was unbelievable. I was playing it with a migraine, and I think it made the migraine worse. But it was a nice common, bit of damage from the otters, but I'd lost so many at this point, and to turn up there and your rod go without even getting the sticks in yet. Actually, I'd run round the other side, which was only about further up the bank in the out of bounds, to spread some bait, and I saw my line going a bit mental. It's something. My mate was there next door. We were on a social, and he was going to pick the rod up. I shouted, "Leave it!" and I went and grabbed it. So there's nowhere for him to go. It's a big pit. I just didn't think my rod was going to go off. I'd been there for 10 minutes. I'd had my rod out for 5. I just quickly ran around, said, "Look after that," chucked some bait out. But it was a very good day catching that first one, because it gave me the drive to carry on with the place.
Yeah, no doubt, mate. No doubt. So obviously you did your time on there. You caught. I'm guessing it ended in catching the big one that you wanted, that you sort of set your stall out for. Before you went back onto there, because I know we're jumping around a little bit here. You
Yeah.
said you went to a few different waters. Where did you go to, and what were you doing?
Well, I mean, about a year where I've done the reservoir. I went to Bled for like a romantic trip with the missus, you know, and ended up fishing out there. Bit of a funny one. Done a little bit in the Colne Valley as well, and done a bit on a park lake. So yeah, I was all over the place. But I went to the reservoir that obviously you remember Tommy Bishop. He's you're not going to forget him in a hurry, but he spoke a little bit about it on his one.
Yeah.
I'd fished it, I don't know how many years previous, but it was a different lake back then. It had a lot more water in it. It was off the radar, I guess. You know, now Ollie Davies is fishing it, you know. So he knew about it a long time. He's a local boy and he's always wanted to fish it, but he's a busy man. But it's a different place now. The water level was a lot higher. Again, another big pit, 60 odd acres, something like that. A fairly small stock of carp, some random ones thrown in from ponds and whatnot, but also a stock of carp that were probably far better than the lake I was fishing. Real old mirrors. Some of them looked ancient. Some of them were fairly clean. I think where it wasn't a gravel pit, it was very silty. The lake was 300 years old, dug in the Napoleon era, hand dug by French prisoners of war. So it was a real old one, very silty, not much in the way of gravel. These fish didn't look like they'd lived in a gravel pit. They looked like they'd lived a relatively good life. You know, I think gravel pit carp themselves a little bit on the snags and on the gravel itself, but these look like they live a good life. But they still looked old, and they were old. I know of them getting caught in the 90s, and they were big back then. And yeah, I went on there, and it just went swimmingly from pretty much straight away. I know people struggled on there, but and I've struggled on other places, so I'm not saying that I'm better than anyone else, but that just suited me perfectly. The turning point for the other lake that we spoke about earlier was going to this lake, because in this lake I learned a lot about my angling. And I think it was going back to, if you want to catch carp, put a rig where they are, right, and try and see that rig go down. Now, all of my fishing had always been lowering rigs on little spots or little cast, running around the other side to see how it's sitting in the snags or whatever it might be. And yeah, with this lake, it was a big pit. Didn't seem possible, but get the waders on, you can go wherever you want. You can drop rigs wherever you want. And the same with a dinghy, you know, you can drop it wherever you want, see it go down. And that's sort of what happened on there. It was a club water at the time, high turnaround of anglers, but it was relatively quiet. But you had a lot of people give it a go. A lot of people did struggle, but yeah, just wading rigs where I was seeing fish, lowering them, and little traps. And I managed to catch 2 of the 3 lins, and they were the best ones in there, you know. There was a common that was beautiful, but I never felt close to it, and I didn't bother. But it all happened really quickly. It was like 6 weeks. I'd caught everything I wanted, and I'd done the off. It just went so well. So yeah, you can't ask for much more than that, really.
Yeah, I think like we all have that, don't we? Every now and then you'll just click with a lake, and it all just sort of falls into place, and it's yeah, it's a good confidence booster, like for sure.
100%.
I know you use that to go back onto the Otter Pit, and yeah, it's just a weird sort of phenomenon, isn't it? And like you say, it's like others around you, they may. I can only speak from my own experience. They might be better anglers than me, but for some reason I've just like clicked with that particular water. It's fun. Like angling is such a funny thing, isn't it? It's like, I don't know, there's just so many variables. I don't think it's like, I might be wrong, but I don't think it's like a racing driver. Like it's very mathematical, and maybe they do click with certain circuits, but I imagine it's much more black and white than carp fishing, where there's so many different fucking variables, and it's like probably a lot of it is down to your mindset. So if you feel that you click with somewhere, you're probably going to click with somewhere and make it happen, if that makes sense.
Without a doubt, if you've got a smile on your face when you're catching those carp, I think you're going to fish for them better, you know. And if you've got confidence in something that someone else hasn't, them using that technique that you're using might not work for them. even though it might be the better way of catching the carp, you know. And for me, I think on there, it just suited me down to the ground. It was clear. I could wade in the water. I remember the week before I caught the big lin, a fish known as the big lin. It swam past me. I caught 2 that session, my first 2 out of there, and then it swam past me. So yeah, it was. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call right now, which is a bit annoying. Didn't accept. God knows how to stop that, but I'll let it ring on. But yeah, I think it was as simple as that, really. Just clicking with the place, it suited me down to the ground. I was seeing them, and if I'm seeing them, I feel like I'm catching them. You know, I think a lot of people using pop-ups on there as well. It was shallow. It was relatively clear, silty but clear. You know, you could present bottom baits, and I think that they'd seen too many pop-ups, in my opinion. Of course.
Yeah. Well, I mean, is bait something that you go into in depth, or do you just sort of use whatever type of bait you think will suit, like pop-up bottom bait, or do you kind of do you pay a bit more attention to it than that, for want of a better?
I think there are times when you need to use pop-ups, obviously, and if I'm using a pop-up, I want a buoyant one that's going to be, my rig's going to work with. In terms of, I mean, for me with bait, it's about the feeding situation rather than the bait itself. So if I'm using boilies, it's because I want a spread and I want them to feed in a particular way, maybe because I have to use pop-ups. If I'm using, let's say, maggots or particle, it's maybe because I've got a little gravel spot in the edge, and I want as much attraction as I can get out of the bait I'm using. And I believe, you know, you can use everything: crumb, hemp, maybe some tigers or whatever, a load of maggots. I mean, what's better than that? Surely that's better than boilies, in my opinion. And I think there are times when they want to eat boilies, something easier to you know, a boilie is surely far better, far easier to eat a boilie than it is a couple of seeds that are sort of hiding in a bit of gravel, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, it's more about the angling situation and what I have to do, and rather than the science behind the bait itself.
Yeah. And it's like, it's really cliche nowadays, isn't it? But you said everyone else is fishing pop-up, so like I just wanted to be different. You know, I'm guessing you fished a bottom bait. It's really cliche thing to say, and everyone says it, but yet not many people do it. It's like this weird phenomenon. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely. I think with pop-ups, I think they work incredibly well. You presented more than you are with the bottom bait, and a lot of people have got massive confidence in them, especially like the real low ones, like the Ronnies and whatnot now, which I just can't use. I can't use a Ronnie, but, you know, it makes sense as to why they work. But I think especially if you're fishing a shallow lake, a bottom bait makes so much more sense to me. It behaves a bit more natural. If you've got a critically balanced pop-up and it's wafting around, to me, it's obvious. They do fish, but I think it's more how many times have they been nailed on a pop-up. It's more than just to be different. It's more, I think it just makes more sense, especially on a silty lake. I think if they are harvesting naturals, a bottom bait is going to get eaten and a pop-up might not, because it's you know, you can't dig a pop-up out. It's there. It might be wafting around, and if they're looking for bloodworm, you've got a bottom bait, a bit of sediment might settle on it, and you know, it's more natural for them. But there are times, obviously, where I've done really well on pop-ups as well. And in situations where you probably shouldn't use them, on gravel and stuff. Choddies on gravel on the Otter Pit, because it wasn't gravel, it was rocks. And I thought, well, I can't put a bottom bait on there because it's just going to lay between these massive boulders. Chod rig was all I could think of, and it worked.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it does, doesn't it? Like, I've fished, I quite like a choddy. I really do. I don't hide it. And I don't usually fish them over clean bottom, I must say. I'd be firmly on the bottom with that. Even with like an overweighted hook bait, that can work really well. That's a different story. Yeah. But yeah, I've done it sometimes. I'm like, fuck it, you know. Or typically I wouldn't use a choddy. I'd use a hinge, and sometimes for whatever reason it just works. And I know there's, like, again with the cliche thing, or you know, have it high off the deck, like a taller pop up for the bigger fish. I think there might be something in that. I think, like, the little fish, whether it's to do with like the how big it is in relation to them, or how they feed, or something like that, I don't know. But I've sort of found if there's a lot of smaller fish present, you go to a taller pop up,
Yeah, there are times when you have to, I mean, there are times when it makes so much more sense to do that. If you have got stockies in the lake or whatever, a taller pop-up makes so much more sense. But for me, I'm overweight in it, so it's not wafting around like a critically balanced hinge or whatever, just so it behaves a little bit more like a bottom bait. But there are times when you need something a bit more blatant to piss off the stockies or whatever, or the smaller carp of whatever reason they're doing in there.
Bottom bait fishing is really out of vogue, isn't it? It's almost an edge in itself, I think, using a bottom bait nowadays.
Yeah, definitely. For me, it's like on the Little Lee Valley water. I'm sure we'll talk about that later, but I used to pop up once on there and it didn't feel right. It was all bottom bait fishing on a lake full of crayfish, full of weed, a very spotty lake. And I'm sure people have done very well on pop-ups, but for me, it's all about the bottom baits. I've had years where I've exclusively fished chod rigs because it just made sense, especially on the leather pit. But nowadays, I haven't put a chod rig out as much as I love the rig, just because of the waters I've fished. I haven't put a chod rig out since fishing the Otter Lake,
And you were fishing choddies on the Otter Lake, was that?
Yeah, it's not how I caught the big one, but it is how I caught the rest of the stock.
Yeah.
And that was just the style of fishing. Big winds, chucking rigs out as far as you could. It ain't going to tangle, and it's going to sort of settle somewhere between the rocks. Tall choddies is better than a bottom bait, I think, and it worked. It caught them.
Why can't you bring yourself to fish a Ronnie? Just don't want to butt the trend.
No, I fished a Ronnie once and I lost the fish, and I hadn't dropped a fish at that point for a long time. And I just look. I fished a Ronnie on a spot that I could have put a bottom bait on, but I was fishing it in January, and I didn't know what kind of leaf litter was on the spot yet, and I just wanted to get a rig out presented. I didn't want to, the light was fading. I wanted to get a rig out on the Lee Valley water, it was a good thing that I lost that fish, because it brought me onto it kept me going in that zone, but. It wasn't like I chucked the Ronnies in the bin after that.
No, fair enough. I like a Ronnie. You can use them anytime.
They're a wicked rig. They're such a good rig. They're just not for me. I'm sure I'm missing out on a massive, well, is it an edge because everyone's doing it, but a massive carp catcher, but I'm not doing it.
That's it.
I used to, Pete, do you remember I used to use the original Ronnie was the 360 rig?
360, yeah.
I used to use that years ago, 15 years ago maybe. And honestly, when I started using that rig, I noticed this. I think that's probably the only rig that I've really, maybe the chod purely because of the presentation, but other than that, I think that's the only rig that I've started using it and I've been like, holy shit, like it made it's probably the right kind of water for it, but it made like a real difference to my angling.
A friend of mine done the same thing with the 360, and I'm sure he still uses that now. Over the Ronnie. So, yeah, it is always about what works for you, and the 360. It's more of an old school rig, isn't it? It doesn't hold the same sort of what's the word, stigma, I guess, as the Ronnie. The Ronnie's a very popular rig used by everybody. Yeah. It's like a little hinge, really. It looks perfect. I just happened to lose one, and I hadn't dropped any fish for a long time, but. Maybe if I'd have landed that one, I'd be on the Ronnies.
Yeah. It's just hard to do anything that's so overused, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah.
Sort of like goes against something inside you. I don't know. I just don't feel right.
For me, it does. If everyone's on a Ronnie, I'm sure that any rig will catch any carp, providing it's presented correctly. But yeah, just not for me. For me.
What do you know? What I just asked this question. I'm totally taking this podcast off track.
No, it's all good.
Why is it called a Ronnie? Does anyone know? I feel like
the bloke who come up with it was called Ronnie or Ronald something or other. I remember seeing something. Martin Bowler had used the original Ronnie rig, and he was tied a little bit differently. And I did tie it up that way, and I liked it a little bit more. So rather than a Ronnie swivel with a hook, it was an ordinary size 10 swivel, a little bit of braid, tiny bit of braid, like a little knot and a little knot, and then the hook with a big bit of shrink tube. So it sat a little bit taller, but I think the movement in that little bit of braid, almost like a little hinge, if you like, I had more faith in that, because metal to metal, just screams hook pulls to me, even though I've got plenty of friends who, you know, anglers far better than I am, who use it to great success.
Yeah, that's what I have nowadays. I basically do an Albright and then to a very flexible braid, just like make a loop on it, put it through the eye, pull it down, put a little ring on the end for the hook bait, and then I cheat. I don't use a shrink tube anymore. I use those little kicker things.
They're good, they are.
I know, I'm almost cringing saying it because they are like, you know, commercialism personified, really. But they are very handy, and yeah, that's what I do now. And I think that's probably better movement if you've got a nice flexible braid.
Yeah,
than it is with the like you say, the metal to metal. I think, I don't know, just don't really
definitely.
like
and them kickers are great for multi rigs as well. You know, for if you want to use a multi rig, but you want something to keep the braid coming out where you want it out of the eye of the hook.
I guess
a kicker's far better than a bit of shrink tube that you got to snip off to redo your hook. So I think that they've got their place, you know, although they are you know, some people might think they're a little bit noddy. I like them. I've done well on them.
Mate, I'm all for making life easy, you know.
Definitely.
Yeah. Anyway, we digress, don't we? So I can't even remember where we're up to. Where
we were talking about the reservoir. We sort of got up to when I caught the Lynn. I mean, the reservoir for me, it was such a short stint, and I'd caught probably a couple of years worth of fish or more in sort of 6 weeks. So there's not loads to say about it, but pretty much I was wading rigs to fish that I was seeing. I saw the target, if you like, swim past me one day, and a week later I caught it from that spot. It literally swam up to me. I've got pictures on my phone of it next to me. It didn't spook. It was unbelievable. And then caught a load more fish, a few more from that spot, and then I went round to another zone. And at the time, I was told I could dinghy on there, which turned out I actually couldn't. So I was dinghying rigs long to where I was seeing them. I used to lap that lake 10 times, big lake. I lap it 10 times until I found them, and then I'd be like, right, I'm getting a rig to that fish. Don't matter how I'm doing it, I'm going to do it. And you know, I was younger as well. It was a long time ago, and I was up for a bit more of that. Nowadays, I can't be asked with it. I'm a little bit more. I don't want to get in trouble, if you like, but it was as simple as that on there, and that's what gave me confidence. The next one I had was the one that Tommy Bishop had, which was the one-sided Lynn, and it's funny on there because it was a bit of a dodgy lake. I remember going to sleep at night, you'd wake up and there'd be a group of rude boys sat on the dam wall smoking their spliffs. It'd shit you up a bit because you're fishing, you've got a brolly or your bivvy or whatever, then you're on your grass, and then there was a path where the public used to go from sort of the countryside, if you like, to an estate in Borehamwood. Then you've got the dam wall, which you used to climb over, a big slope, then a sort of flat sort of concrete zone, and then the water where your rods were 10, 15 yards out, because obviously you can't put your sticks in a wall. So quite a few I'd had fishing at long range, and the rod rips off one day. Literally, I'm just hearing my alarm screaming. I run out in me trainers, no waders or anything. So I jumped over a wall, slid down the slope, straight in the water, running through to the rod. It's the most exciting thing ever because there's so much anticipation while you're trying to sort of get to your rod, which is like an obstacle course away. It was like doing what's that film on ITV where you Ninja Warrior. It's a little bit like that. It was mental, and and then I didn't lose a fish on there, fishing the braid after losing my confidence on the other lake, and sort of playing them from 170, 180 yards, whatever it was, landing all of them, and the last one happened to be the one-sided Lynn, which Tom had it quite small because they'd just spawned. It was one of them lakes, didn't have any real big ones in it, but they were real special ones. And they were unknown. People kept it quiet on there. It used to be a tiny little syndicate of about 10 people, I think. Then it went to a club. And I'd heard a little bit. I didn't really know the story. I didn't even know this fish had existed. and I'd caught what I thought was the best one in there a little while before. And this fish was just ridiculous. One side was scales that looked like they were going to fall off, sort of scattered linear. It was a mid-30, didn't matter. One of the best lins about, I'm telling you. Maybe not quite as good as them white swan lins nowadays, but back then it was amazing. The other side was pretty much bald until the wrist of the tail had a few scales on it, and a bit of sort of armour along its gill plate, some scales there. But yeah, just a classic looking carp, you know, a long, lean, dark, chestnutty. And that was the last one I had out of there. And after that, I just thought, I'm done now, you know. I've caught the sort of 2 best ones in here quickly over sort of 6-week period, and plenty of others as well. And it was time for me to sort of to move back on, I guess, to the other lake.
Is it which? So I get lost easy, but earlier we were. Well, not on the podcast. We were talking about flow state, or you were talking about flow state, and there was a bit of nature reserve flow state. What have we covered that lake yet? I wanted to ask you about that.
Oh, which one was the flow state? I can't remember that. That was. Oh yeah, so there's 2, right? So you've got all the reservoir was certainly, it was flow state, undoubtedly. You know, it was. Everything just went just like that. There was no thought to it. There was no thought to anything. It just happened, you know. And all of a sudden, you've got an album of amazing carp without really any thought, you know, rigs, nothing. I didn't think about anything. It just happened. I remember there was a song I used to play on routes to the lake, and it sort of get me in this zone, and I'd smile. And every time I hear that song now, it reminds me of that time. But yeah, I play that song, do the drive, enjoy every bit of it. If I got stuck in traffic, I wouldn't care, because I knew everything was going to go swimmingly when I went down there, and it always did. And yeah, the same thing happened on the other lake in the Reeds. This was on the Otter Pond, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want me to talk about that now, or
yeah, talk. Yeah, as much as you can talk about. Yeah, talk about it now.
Yeah, no worries. Well, I mean, the Otter Lake, I'd had some time off. I'd gone back when my little one was born. Done one night, caught one. A lovely looking common, almost 30 pounds. Didn't really matter though, you know, proper overslung mouth, looked like it belonged in the Colne Valley. And again, looked like it hadn't been caught. Anyway, I was done then. The little one was born. I, at that time, was fishing another lake, a lake in the Colne Valley, a big one. And once the little one was born, I thought, I need something a little bit more manageable. So I went elsewhere. And, you know, months down the line, I'd had a little operation on my chest. I had a device in my heart, which meant for a period I couldn't lift too much. So I just wanted something a little bit more easier. I had the little one. It was a tough time. We were living at my missus' mum's at the time. It's quite a small house, trying to get in the flat. And, yeah, I just needed something that I could just sort of drop onto. Anyway, I decided to fish another lake near to the Otter Pond. And I was on there one day, and I texted my mate, and this was the 1st of April, and I said, I know where they're going to be on the Otter Pond today. I know exactly where they're going to be. But I don't know if I'll be able to fish for them around there. So he was like, look, do what you need to do. Don't get in trouble. I'd never seen a bailiff on this lake. I'd seen one other angler. And it was it was one of them. I'd followed every single rule going at that point. But at this time, I packed up from this lake, this 100-acre lake, got back to the car, cut a mile walked around to where I thought I was going to see them. And they were all there. Like the whole stock, 25 fish up a tree. I knew they were going to be there. I don't know what it was, and there was no reason to say that they were going to be there, but I just knew it. And I knew that if I could get a rig in there, I'd catch one. I'd fished that spot plenty of times, but it was a lot of aggro to get a rig out there, wading out of far away, chucking. And I caught from there as well. But I knew that I weren't going to catch them like that on this day, you know, because I had a couple of hours before I had to be at home. Anyway, weirdly, I'd picked 1,000 different bugs and snails out of this weed that I'd raked in for a completely different purpose I won't go into. And I waded out, thrown all them insects in with a bit of crumb. I'm not saying it was the insects, and I'm not saying, I don't know what, but they got into a frenzy pretty quickly. And amongst them was this big mirror that I'd only ever seen one photograph of. And the bloke didn't look very experienced. The bloke who was holding it, he was holding it sort of in a funny way. Real tree camo kind of bloke. Not judging, I used to be one of them. But from 15 years ago, the photo that I'd seen, and it's all I'd ever seen of this fish. And I saw it in front of me. I thought it was otter food. I'd seen so many otters on that place and so many dead carp in the margins as well. And I'd only ever known of two mirrors, that one and a smaller linear, which was a lovely fish I never caught. Anyway, I saw it there and I thought, I've got to catch this fucker. I'm going to have to go and get a rod. So I went and got a rod. It took me about, I don't know, half an hour until the coast was clear, and another half an hour to, because it's a public lake, and another half hour to slowly create a path in these Norfolk reeds. Once I was in there and outside, I could pretend to be a swan smashing the place up. So I got in there, and they were all there feeding on the stuff that I'd thrown in earlier, including this mirror. Every time its tail was in the air, its scales were flexing. I was seeing the whites of the scales. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, I waited until it had disappeared, lobbed the rig out, proper fluffed the cast, spooked some fish that I didn't even know were there. It didn't go to plan at all. Chucked the rig back out there without a bag on or anything. So I'm thinking, because I had a little bag on before, no foam, nothing like that. I've only got my rod, camera on a tripod, a mat, and a net. And I'm squatting, and my legs are killing me as well. And I flick the rod back out again, trying not to be seen. There was no fish by this point. And within 3 minutes, the fully, it's a big fully, sort of disc-shaped fish. And I've only ever known of it being caught the once. Comes back. First mouthful was my hook bait. Anyway, it had shot off. Everything just flowed. I didn't think about anything. It just happened. It was almost like I let my instincts take over. And I think that's really important with my fishing and it's really important for sort of my mental health and stuff as well, is, when in life do you use your gut, your head and your heart? You don't really. In life, you work, you come home, you stick the TV on, you're brain dead until you go to sleep, have some dreams, wake up and go back to work. And that's why this kind of fishing does it for me, because I'm using, what I really am. I'm a more than a sort of working whatever. And it proves it on this day to me. It showed me that there are unexplainable parts of myself, if you like, that help me. Could call it this. I heard Oz Holness call it the flow state the other day. Athletes call it that, so we'll call it that. Anyway, nothing was thought of. It just happened, and all of a sudden, it shot off in a foot of water, and it's done a run of about 100 yards. Now I'm fully exposed. I've got a bank of. I've got like a sort of probably 1,000 yards away. There's bird watchers and this and that and whatever else. I'm not concentrating on them, but I'm aware of the fact that I'm exposed. Anyway, a proper scrap. I get the fish in, and for some reason, I didn't know whether it was the fish or not, even though I saw it shot off. A lot of fish shot off. The stock was there, 20 carp, 25 carp. I saw the big plated scales when I got it close, and I just started mumbling all kind of words, like little prayers or mantras to get this thing in my net. And by the time it had got in, I was on my knees. I was in water anyway, the reeds are in the water. I was on my knees. I wouldn't say I was close to tears. It was more than that. It was something that will live with me forever. And it's only a fish at the end of the day. We carp anglers, we fish for fish. That's all they really are. But the feeling I got from that, you don't get from just anywhere. You don't get from even a club lake with some nice carp in it, or maybe even a circuit water. You're a wild animal, and you've made contact with another wild animal, and that's what happened on that day. And it's hard to find that kind of fishing, and I was blessed at that time to have had it. But done some self takes, 10-second timer self takes, done a little video, and just I walked out, and for the first ever time saw a bailiff done me there and then, got in trouble. I've paid my dues. And I said to him, I said, mate, I would say I'm sorry, but I've just caught the fish that I've been after for a long time and I'm over the moon. And he said, well, I can't argue with that. He was fuming. He was fuming to start with. There was steam coming out of his ears, but he said, I can't argue with that. Let's get in a swim and we'll sort it out. And he gave me a bollocking and he sorted it out. And as far as I'm concerned, that's done. But he said that I was watching you with my binoculars, mate. And what can you do? I don't regret it because of the feeling I got was worth being banned from that lake forever. And luckily, I think it's because we had a great conversation and I ended up actually fishing another lake that he bailiffs later on. And he said, mate, you're a good bloke. And I wouldn't say we're friends, but we get on now. So it was well worth the aggro at the time, without a doubt. One of the best fish I'll ever catch. And it's not about size. I didn't weigh it. It was a big fish. It was everything. It was the full, that day had everything that carp fishing has to offer, and that's why it will stay with me forever.
Yeah, what you said, like it's just one. What did you say? One wild animal meeting another wild animal. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I have this thought all the time. This is my theory, right? And the wine is kicked in, so forewarning.
The beers are kicked in.
Good. We'll get all deep and then. I often think to myself, I think the reason why anglers fish and even hunters hunt, like deer hunters, etc., I think it's because we've got a part of us that wants to get closer to what we admire. Now,
without a doubt.
I don't know if that'll make sense to anyone else, but that thought, when I first had that thought, I was like, well, yeah, that's it. And I've thought about it ever since. Probably had this thought going around my head for about a year. And I think it's really true. And when you said that, it's just one wild animal meeting another, it made me think of it. It's just so true to me. Anyway.
Without a doubt. I mean, the whole reason we do it is to feel something. It's not outly worldly, like doing drugs or anything like that. It's people refer to it as a drug, but I think that's the adrenaline rush. This is something else that you don't get from getting runs on wherever. This is a connection with, albeit arguably a negative connection because an animal is suffering to an extent.
Yeah.
But but ignoring that, and I go through the morality of it all the time, but ignoring that, you're totally outside of your work, the expectations in society of yourself, your worries, everything. The system itself of work, music, this, whatever. Ignore all of that. You turn into another kind of being when you're doing that kind of fishing, or if just however other way you get that feeling. But and that's what it's all about for me. Is feeling that. If I didn't feel that, and it only happens every few years, but I've had it more than a few times. If I didn't feel it, I wouldn't be doing it. And I question sometimes when I catch big carp why I do it, and then I catch carp like that, and I go, "Oh, that's why I do it." It's far more than catching a fish, and it's far more than catching a 40-pounder or a 50-pounder or whatever. And that's why I've never been too fussed by weighing them or PBs or anything like that. There are times when I desire a 40-pounder and I go for it. But the scratch isn't really itched by the end of it. You want to go and do a little bit of what I've just explained, That's what it's all about for me. And if that ceased to exist and it was all just otter fence syndicates, as great as they are, and I've had some good times on them, I'd definitely stop. I'd stop doing it.
Yeah, and you've obviously got a lot of admiration and respect for the fish, and that's why that's why we want to get close to them, right? It's like we want to touch them, hold them, and it's just a weird thing, isn't it? But I like the fact you don't weigh all your fish, right? I'm the same. It's like almost like if it's a carp that you've worked your ass off for, it's like a huge kind of achievement. You're almost disrespecting them by wanging them in a sling and reducing them to numbers. It just sort of feels a bit soulless sometimes. Don't get me wrong, I weigh most of my big fish, but it does sort of feel a bit wrong in a way.
Well, you're getting out of that animal state, if you like, and you're putting it back to right. What how is this perceived in the carp angling world as an achievement? Yeah. It is an ego thing, and I do go fishing sometimes for my ego. There is an ego boosting when you're doing well on a lake where no one else is. It's a different kind of buzz, and I like it for every aspect. When I hear people say, "Why'd you go? You shouldn't go fishing for 40 pounders, or you shouldn't go fishing for this." Look, if you want to go fishing because you want to stick a picture on Instagram, do it. Go for whatever reason you want, and I go for all of it. I go for the barbecues with my mates, and I go for the solidarity and whatever else. But the main thing, I'd go camping if it wasn't for these kind of buzzes that don't come around too often. I've only had probably 4, 5 of these in my whole life. They happen probably more actually because it happened a lot more when I was younger because it was all new. But now it's not new. You need, it's a bit like maybe if you're a bit of a, if you're getting hold of a lot of women, you want something different and something a little bit more every time. It's the same kind of thing to an extent, but the main thing is wild. It's wild and raw, and that's what it's all about for me.
Yeah, spices, mate. You don't want to stick to one spice forever, do you?
No.
Same as women and lakes. That's good. That's good stuff.
Sorry, Jake.
Go on.
I was going to say, with that capture, did you say you'd picked out like thousands of snails and stuff out from the weed?
Yeah, I've got a picture of it. I picked out, I don't know, a good handful full of shrimp, damselfly larvae. I'd raked a load of weed, bloodworm, snails, everything, and I threw it out there. It just so happened that I'd done that, and then I'd had this sixth sense as to, I knew something good was going to happen on the day. I knew I was catching, but I wasn't catching on the other lake. I knew it weren't going to happen. So, and then this thing popped in my head. The weather, it just looks great. It's 1st of April. It's early, but I know where they're going to be. I just know. And it just so happened that when I waded out there, I had a pocket full of insects and boilie crumb, and that was the thing that went out there. If I had sweet corn in my pocket, that would have gone out there. But whether it helped or not, I don't know. But it worked for the big one. Whatever happened, single. If I'd have used boilies, maybe that they would have fed in another manner, and I would have caught a fucking 28-pound common, or I would have caught an unknown one that I didn't know about. That has sort of evaded my eye, because there's no records of any stocking that I know of in this lake. There's no, it doesn't get fish. It's just, the only reason I knew what was in there is because I see it with my own eyes. And then that one picture that could have been dead. So I was fishing for myths to an extent. And just so happens that one of the myths turned out to be a legend, So
no, Colin, it's a lovely insight, mate. You painted a lovely picture.
Yeah, I hope so. I've had a few beers now, so God knows how this is coming out. But that's pretty much that one summed up. It was a smile for about 3 months, and something that I'll struggle to beat.
Yeah, lovely, absolutely lovely. So sorry, guys, I've interrupted again and sort of ruined the flow.
No. Do you know what? I need to go to the toilet, to be fair. So. I don't know if
who was it who had the weakest bladder, Sam? Was it Ben?
Ben Pinniger.
Jake's going to push him for the weakest bladder, isn't he?
That's the cereal bloke.
There, that's it.
Yes.
Yeah. I listened to the whole thing. And he kept going, "Can we just go for a piss?" It was so funny. I was pissing myself watching it.
Cereal urinator.
Yeah. Right. I'm going to How do I mute myself? Do you know what? Whatever, doesn't really matter.
Oh, mate, it'll be edited out, but don't be shy. Pinnacles in our carp fishing life, I know obviously they're few and far between. That was one of them. I think for you, another one was the Colne Valley pit.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. So the Colne Valley pit was certainly a bigger challenge. The fish, if aesthetically wasn't what that fully was at all, but the buzz arguably was better, because I my little one had just been born. I had this ticket for this Colne Valley water that I'd fished the year previous while my missus was pregnant. I was doing the 6 days a week at work. And one of the biggest challenges in carp fishing for me was catching one from this water, 160 acres in the Colne Valley, 30 carp in there roughly, loads of out of bounds, a big stretch that a big bit that could only be fished for by the BCSG, and I didn't have that ticket, so I was on a little club ticket, and I'd done a bit of time on there the year previous, got nowhere near a carp. I found them a couple of times after spawning, but they didn't look too happy. There was a massive algae bloom on there, and I was nowhere near it. And after the little one was born, I didn't fish for a little while. And then I said to my missus, she was suffering a little bit with postnatal depression as well, and I didn't want to rock the boat in any way, because I had to appreciate that, you know, these ladies go through a lot when they're giving birth and afterwards. But I needed to go fishing. The little one was 4.5 months old at this point, and I hadn't been. So I went down this lake in the Colne Valley I've been fishing, and I'd arranged 3 nights. I'd had a bit of a row with another angler when I got down there, so I went home in the hump with the ump, and then I went back down there the next day, and I ended up doing a couple of nights do you know what? That was the week before, and I didn't fish. I went back to the Otter Pond the week after and got some rigs a couple of 100 yards out. Although there were fish there, so this is like a couple of hours away from the Colne Valley water. Although there were fish on me, and it took a lot of effort to get that rod out a couple of 100 yards, I packed the car away, another sort of sixth sense, if you like, and drove 2 hours after setting up down to the Colne Valley water. I just knew where they were going to be again. I don't know. Well, I mean, it was spring. There's a shallow bay. I'd never seen him in there, but it just made sense. So I got in this shallow bay. Another bay to the right, I'd found 2 fish. Now, that's pretty much all I'd ever seen on there, you know. But I didn't fish there. I knew that it was, just from doing a bit of homework the year before, it was a deep bay. And by the way, the bays on here are 15 or 20 acres, you know. It's a big lake, so a bay is, it's not like a couple of acres. And this bay, I'd set up in it and done the night. And then a load of fish had come in at about 11 o'clock at night. This was in May. Backs were out the water. I caught nothing that night. Next day, saw nothing all day. That night, I'd repositioned rigs where I'd seen them. Just bottom baits in little clear areas. The weed was coming up, but there were little clear areas. The fish had come back in at night, disappeared. Anyway, I'm just about to leave, and a couple of boys were looking at jumping in. These are 2 legends who, to me anyway, who used to fish Stockers Lake. I believe they still do. And in the close season, they'd come on to this lake. And names were Ray and Graham, and they were proper old school Colne Valley boys. And they were like, "Are you going? Because looking good in here." I was going. I was all packed up. I said, "Yeah, I'm going. I was supposed to go home 2 hours ago, but I just can't let myself go. I don't want to go home." And pretty much as I'd said that, 10 carp had swam in the bay, right past me, including the big one, a 50-pounder that had been chucked in from the famous, you know, from the Harefield Lake. But the rest of them were sort of wild commons. And this fish had come right down my left-hand margin to a sort of sandy area. And I thought, right, that's it. Tied this ropey old rig, got all the rods in and waded it out. Once they'd swam off, I waded it out next to this tyre, just so I know where I could see the tyre from the bank 50 yards away. And I knew that if some black shapes had rocked up, that's where my rig is. And anyway, this fish had rocked up. Literally, one of them had swam off. I thought nothing of it. As it had swam off, a log had followed it. For some reason, I thought nothing of it. I carried on watching these fish. Anyway, this fish had gone 30 yards, 20 yards, 10 yards, and swam straight past me. And there was a log attached to this fish. Turns out that my line had looped under this log. This fish almost looked like it weren't hooked. I don't know if the buoyancy of the log, I don't know what was going on. Anyway, the line had gone a bit funny. I realised what had happened, and I was hooked into, I never thought it was going to happen. I was supposed to be home at 1 o'clock. My missus was suffering at the time. And this is where you push the limit sometimes. She was suffering at home, and I knew I needed to be home. But at the same time, I hadn't been fishing for months. And I knew there was an opportunity in my heart. I knew it was going to happen. And I knew she'd understand as well. Anyway, the fish had swam past me. I picked the rod up. Massive fight with this log. I'm not joking. It was about 6 foot long, attached to the braid the whole time. Something was on my side that day. Like I said, I was supposed to be fishing elsewhere. It really did ruck. The log actually fell off 5 minutes into the fight, let's say, and then it was all right after that. And yeah, I landed. Again, the emotions were unbelievable. It was the animal instinct again. Everything just went perfectly, and there wasn't much thought to it. I don't know why I waded that rig next to that tyre, and I don't know why. Any of it really happened. Why I stayed. Could have gone home. I hadn't seen a fish that morning. It just all fell into place. And 10 minutes later, I had these 2 Colne Valley boys and one of the local boys who'd done well in the area, taking some photos for me of a fish from a lake that, in my eyes, was the ultimate challenge. Unlike the Otter Pond, it wasn't about the fish. It was about the lake, and it was about catching something that no one else had, catching something that no one else really wanted to fish for, because life is too short. And that year I'd done 4 nights on there, and I managed to catch one. And for me, it was like, well, for that year after that, I'd had the operation later on, so I sort of gave up anyway for a bit. But for me, it was like, well, what's the point now? I'm in a good way. I've done what I wanted to do this year. I'd had a few from the Otter Pond, and then this one had come along, and I just looked, was with the family after that, enjoyed a great summer, and I was fully fulfilled. I mean, when are you fulfilled in your fishing? It's very rare, but you always want more, don't you? But on this instance, and just like the other one, I didn't want any more. I was so happy with what I had, and that done me. That was May. That done me until September was the next time I went fishing. Sounds mad, but I'll never get that time back with my little one, that first year. And it was one of the best years of my life. So I'm glad it went the way it did. And if someone could say to me, look, I'll give you 10 syndicate 40s for that fish, I'd stick my middle finger up at them, because it's not, it's just a completely different thing. It's the difference between bloody bass fishing and that's how far away that is from this. It's like a different sport in a sense. And I don't do it all the time, but when I can, I will. That was, it's a short and sweet sort of on there. I will go back there one day. It's unfinished business, but right now I ain't got the time for it, So yeah, that was another one of them sort of wild animal meets wild animal kind of scenarios, I guess.
Yeah, lovely, man. I'm looking at the photo of you with it right now, actually, and it's
to an outside perspective, maybe that is just a carp in a lake, and I get it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a nice, clean common, isn't it? It's like got real overslung mouth. It is a cracking fish, obviously. But it's like, if someone just saw that photo, obviously they'd think, fucking hell, it's a nice fish, great shot. But it's the backstory to it. It's like what you went through. It's like the environment it comes from.
That's it was blood, sweat and tears the year before, It was blood, sweat and tears. It wasn't just like I turned up that spring and caught it. But there was the year before was just a blank year. I didn't catch nothing.
Yeah. We've all been there, mate. More often than not for me.
And me, to be fair, these are sort of small moments in time where it goes the way that you want it to go. And I'd rather that than catching all the time, because, I get pissed off when I'm not catching, don't get me wrong. But it does make it extra special. And, that kind of fishing is fishing for yourself, isn't it? You're fishing for something that no one else really desires or wants to go through it, and 99% of the time I don't have it in me to go through it either. And there are some anglers who somehow have that drive to do that kind of fishing all the time, and I could only admire them, because I could imagine the amount of times they've felt that feeling that I desire is tens of, or if not hundreds of times more than what I've experienced, and that's the main reason I do it.
Yeah, it's an odd one, isn't it? I'll be honest, I crave that kind of thing, that adventure, that water to sort of really like give myself to. I haven't had that with the water for probably like 8 years, probably more now, and I just can't. Like I've like hit this real like block where I can't seem to find that water that really does it for me, or like lights me up. Don't get me wrong, like there's waters I fish loads which I love. I love being there, love everything about it. But that, like, you know, the big expanses of like the real sort of mission waters, I just can't find one that really just does it for me. The thing is, everything's so fucking busy now. Like carp fishing is much busier than it once was. And I know there's some exceptions to that. I know, you know, some pits, you know, 20 years ago were really, really busy, but these lesser known sort of hidden gems, like, they're not hidden anymore. There's people on them. There's people doing it already. And it's like you'll find something, get a bit of a lead, you know, look on Google Earth as we all do, and go there and think, all fucking excited, like, yes, yeah, not going to be anyone there. And then there could be like, there might be no fishing on there, but there's like 4 or 5 blokes, you know, dotted around a 100-acre lake, tucked away. You know, you only really know they're there because you're an angler and you know where you'd be. But it just shits on it a little bit. You know, it's like those waters are hard to find now, I think.
Definitely. And when it's yours, it's different to when you're sharing it with 5 other people, even 100%. If you are all tucked away, you know.
100%. Yeah.
And I feel like, you know, with the Colne Valley water, it wasn't mine. There were other anglers on there, and there was other anglers who fished the swim that I'd fished after I had, and emptied the place. You know, they caught 10 fish in. I know they were doing a lot of time, but and this isn't the 2 Colne Valley boys. They weren't fishing all the time, but they were good anglers. You know, there were others on there who they bailiffed it, and they done really well. They done a lot of time, but that's what you need to do. You need to do, if you can. Why wouldn't you? I would if I had it, and I could have it if I put everything else to one side. But you are right. You know, they are few and far between, and I think Europe is where it's at for that kind of buzz.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing with Europe is it's hard to get stuck in when you live over here. You know, it's a trip rather than something that you can really sort of think, right, today is the day, get down there. You know, it's a bit more forced with Europe, because you'll go in there with an agenda. You know, sometimes nothing wrong with that. I mean, the boys who live over there, I'm sure they're sort of living the dream, and I'd love to go and do an adventure over there. I've done bits and bobs, don't get me wrong, but nothing like what you're seeing nowadays that sort of exploded. That looks amazing. But yeah, if I can get a little bit of that over here, I will. And like I said, it's not what I look for all the time, because I've really got to push everything in my life. And sometimes I do, you know, sometimes I will work a little bit less than I should. During the lockdown, certainly, I was told I weren't allowed to work for 6 months. So I did a night a week, done the most fishing I'd ever done in my life. I think I'd done 50 nights in 2020, and it was a good year. But yeah, I mean, I'd suffered for it at the end because I was pretty skint, and I've never experienced that before. So I weren't on furlough or anything, but yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, it's certainly few and far between that kind of buzz that we're after. Especially, I think are you southwest, are you?
Oh, I'm in Cotswolds. Pete's down in Cornwall.
Yeah, Pete, you're in Cornwall.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for you. Although while I was down there, I did walk a lake. I'm not going to name it, and I loved the look of it. Don't know how big it was, can't remember. But I then saw a photo go up of a £50 common, which then got deleted from the website it was on. Does that ring any bells, or am I dreaming?
Bit of a wrong one. You can name it and we'll just beep it out.
Porth Reservoir. Does that ring any bells?
Yeah. Porth's our old stomping ground. There's no £50 common in there, though.
Is there not? I'm sure I saw a Cornish 50.
No.
It was a common.
You did, mate. It got published in a magazine.
Where was that?
So no, that was at Porth. But it no. It was I think it was one of the locals entered a competition, and it was a Cornish £50 common, and he won the competition, and he was just having a laugh.
So in my head, it looked like a decent one, but maybe
I think he actually had it in France, mate. It might have been a French fish.
That makes sense.
And I think that's the link. Yeah.
Gutter. Yeah. I wanted to go back there, but yeah, I will. One of them ones. I feel sorry for you living in Cornwall, though.
Yeah. It's got its charms, mate. I try and tell myself that.
Certainly. Sorry. Yeah. My missus has got family down there, and I go there here and there, and it's a lovely place. Just not great on the carp fishing front.
No, I bought Porth this week, actually, mate. Funnily enough.
It's a nice place.
Oh, it's a really, beautiful resi. I sent you a photo of catfish, didn't I, Sam? I saw on the edge.
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
There's loads of cats sitting there now. Well, I say loads, quite a few, some big ones as well.
Bloody hell. Yeah, I'm not. You won't see me fishing there then.
It's like Tommy Bish, afraid of the catfish.
Yeah, well, I caught him in the Ebro in November. I was fishing for carp, but we'd done a bit. A mate of mine out there, we'd done he lives out there, and I went and met him, and he just said, look, just fucking stick a couple of cat rods out. You've got to experience it. And yeah, it was not, it weren't for me. Let's put it that way. I caught a 95 pounder, I think, the first fish. And I just didn't know what to do with it. I wasn't scared of it. I didn't want to touch it. It was sick everywhere.
Oh,
not nice. Anyway.
Yeah, never caught a cat. I wouldn't mind, to play one, feel its power. Yeah, I'd be up for that.
Just one.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough about the catfish.
Mate, you talk a lot about your family and like balancing your time. So you were saying about how you do like you're attacking fishing, sort of like you get like a 6 weeks in at a time, 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off.
Yeah.
Are you sort of full time in it on those 6 weeks, or are you sort of one night a week?
Yeah, it is one night a week. I had a period in 2019 where I did 2 nights a week for 3 weeks in the December. One of those nights was I've done the Christmas shopping and the birthday shopping for the little one. I've got a car full of presents. I couldn't fit a bed chair in. Chuck a brolly and a rod in and a net and a mat, obviously. Get down in the pre-baited spot at 2 a.m. And it's that kind of thing, for me. It's not about the nights that I'm fishing. It's all about the... how do I put it? It's more about the prep that I can do, whether that's walking it or baiting it. I mean, the Little Lee Valley water that I've been fishing, I've finished on there in May, but fished it in the winter of 2019, and I've done the autumn of 21 because I went elsewhere after the lockdown. So I've done about 30 nights in the end, and then I did 4 nights this year in the spring. On there it was all sort of, before work, get up 4 or 5 in the morning, get round there, walk it, bait it. After work, if my missus is asleep, walk the lake and see if I'm seeing anything showing or whatever. Very intense, but the actual fishing itself, some weeks I wouldn't go. I was still pushing the limits then, because for me, I want to walk my little one to school on my day off. I don't want to go fishing because although I love it, she don't get the time back. She'll be 15 years old one day and she won't want to know me. And I've got another one on the way right now. So, with the Lee Valley water, I was doing 1 or 2 nights a week, but mainly one night. I'd done lots of 2 nights in November. And one of them was on the floor on the last day of November, but I caught one, so it was worth it. It's some lovely
this is recently as well. This is
fairly, this is recently.
And you're still kipping on the floor
when I have to, when I have to.
Good for you.
You know what? It's all about if the rod's on the spot and I'm confident, and on that water, it was tricky, but get enough, pre-bait enough times on the right spots. There was probably 3 spots on that lake that I felt fairly confident in. I know people have blanked 30 nights on there, but I clicked with the place, they were very spotty fish, and I ensured that my rigs were on them spots that maybe I didn't know about, but the spot within the spot, under a bush. The further under a bush you could get, or the more awkward it could be, the better, because they've been hammered everywhere else. You know, it's a club lake. Probably 4,000 or 5,000 members could have access to it. And it's not busy all the time. It's a tricky lake. You know, sometimes there's no one on there, but high turnaround. There was a bloke on there doing 5 nights a week while I was on there, and I thought, in my head, I was like, I'm never catching this common I'm after. It was an old one, probably, you know, it's been about for a long time. It's been £40 for a long time. It's jumped around lakes over the years, and it's a nice one. But it had some good mates in there as well, the fish, and I made sure that even though there was a bloke doing 5 nights and there was a bloke doing a few overnighters and whatever else, I just made sure that big common had its breakfast, you know, every 3 days. And that was a big sacrifice, because it meant not getting a lot of sleep or waking up really early, going to bed really late. And it, you know, it sort of worked. But I think for me on there, all of my fish come in the edge, little traps, lots of crayfish, but I'd make sure to pre-bait them spots with lots and lots of bait. So then by the time I get there, the carp had spooked the crayfish away. The carp had fed, the crayfish had pissed off. It worked. I very rarely got crayed, and it was notorious for it. If I chucked a second rod out, it was often one rod. That rod would get crayed because I hadn't done the prep that I'd done on the other rod. And anyway, I'd caught pretty much all of them out of this lake, pre-baiting little edge spots, and using the baiting pole. So what I'd do is, like I said earlier, I'd put a baiting pole, dip it out of the out of bounds, so run round there and stick it out, cast over it, drag it in, put it in the spoon, the rig, and then drop it right close in. So you're fishing where no one, I could pre-bait that spot thinking no one's ever going to fish that. And I saw the big one on there, and I'd catch on real short sessions when people were doing 5 nights and blanking. So I knew that I was onto something. I saw the common there. I knew I was going to catch it from that spot. I just knew. But then while I was pre-baiting one day, a tree fell down and totally ruined everything. So I had to, all this prep and whatever else, I had to go elsewhere. And I caught a lot of nice carp out of that lake doing similar things in other swims. And because I was doing the overnighters, no one knew about it. So come spring this year, everyone thought I was new on the lake. But it turns out I was just there in the hours of darkness doing self-takes if I'd caught one, and no one ever knew that I was on there. And because it's not my kind of water, really, it's a club water and it's busy, but I fished it in my way and it worked. I caught lots of carp. I caught 15 carp, and they just so happened to be the second best, the third best, and whatever else. I was really lucky. And some of them had died. But a lot of people had said that common loves a nut in the middle. And going on past captures, it was the truth. So I thought, right, I'll start fishing in the middle and pre-baiting a spot in the middle. Totally against my instinct and everything that I talked about earlier, against all of that. But I did it anyway. And I pre-baited it. I saw fish showing on it. The spot got harder. I never caught on it. I fished it. I've done 4 nights this spring, just gone. And I said to my missus, she was suffering bad with the morning sickness, really bad. She ended up in hospital for a few days. And while she was there, she ended up getting COVID. I don't think she had it. They just tested her and said she's got it. She had no phone on her. So it was a real tough time in my life. I was taking the little one to school or taking her to my mum's house to look after her, walking the dog, and going to work, doing as much work as I could, and then picking the little one up. I had snuck in the hospital because she was in a ward where I wasn't allowed to be, just to give her some supplies, because it was a real funny one. She lost a lot of weight. It was a scary time. She's pregnant and she was really ill. As soon as she was well enough to she come home and everything settled down a bit, I said, look, I'm really feeling the strain. I've just done a couple of months of it was a real tough time for me because I was on autopilot trying to do what was best for the family. And I know I've done my best as well. And my missus always does her best. So I've got to do my best. Otherwise it's unbalanced. I said, look, now you're feeling a bit better. Do you mind? I'll do a bit of fishing. She was like, no, of course not. She's always been very understanding, but I always try not to take the piss. Anyway, going back to it, that was just a little bit of a bit of backlog as to what was going on simultaneously to the lake. I hadn't fished the March period, and I was clucking to go. So yeah, I've done 4 nights that spring. So the spring just gone. Didn't catch anything, but lots of pre-baiting, lots of fishing in the middle, lots of doing what I thought was best to catch that common. And then one day, I just knew I was going to catch the common. Something in my head changed, and I was like, I'm going to catch that common. Didn't know how, didn't know whatever. It was my birthday. And I went to the tackle shop. It was my birthday. There was a lot of traffic in Watford town centre. So I went to a tackle shop that was local. I'd never been there before. It was like a tackle shop from the 1960s. I said, you're right, mate. I said, I'll have a gallon of maggots. He said, I haven't got a gallon. I said, all right, I'll have whatever you've got, all your maggots. He said, what do you want, white or red? I said, reds. He said, I haven't got reds. I said, all right, we'll have whites then. It was ridiculous. So I got my maggot. I ended up going to another tackle shop and getting another gallon. Got down the lake the next day, and we got stuck in a traffic jam an hour and a half as well. It was a pretty shit birthday, to be honest with you. She was feeling rough. It just didn't go to plan. So I got down to and we missed the baby scan on that day because of the traffic. So got down to the lake the next day thinking, I know I'm going to catch the common. I just know it. I don't know what had happened, but I never felt close to that fish, and I'd caught pretty much everyone in there, and worth catching anyway. And dragged the lead quickly across the spot in the middle I've been baiting. Felt spot on. But right, I get 2 weeks on that. I looked to my bush to the left, and 2 weeks previous, I didn't say this, I climbed up the tree and I'd seen the common looking a bit battered, swimming to this bush from the open water, looking a bit uncomfortable. I say a bit battered. It had 2 scales lifted on the other side. No one had told me, but the fish had been caught about a month ago, and I didn't know. And it had gone to the biggest set of snags in the lake. Now, I'd seen it from up the tree, and I thought, do I go with my gut and do what I always do and fish from where I can see him in the edge, or do I do what everyone else does, which works? I'll do what works. I've done that twice, and I see the common in the bush the next session, which was the 3rd session. On the 4th session, I'd pre-baited this spot so many times. It was rock hard, bang on. Going to put 2 rigs out there. Went and had a look in the bush, and I see 3 big mirrors in there, which I'd caught already. Thought, fuck it. I'm putting one in the edge. So I jumped in, got one in the edge, put 2 gallon of maggots over it. Just went with the instincts. I just thought, there's big fish down there. Where there's big fish, there's I felt like that common had to be there. And it's the only common that I know of in the lake. Definitely the only big common in the lake. And all I'd caught is mirrors. Anyway, the next, a mate had come down, a non-angler that night. We'd had a few beers and a curry. And normally I'm just by myself. So it was a lovely treat for my birthday. Good friend of mine from when we were in nappies. And I told him, I said, look, mate, I'm catching this common tonight. I said, so if you want to stay down here, feel free. He was like, yeah, I'll stay down. And we had a curry, load of beers. It was wicked. I went to bed that night thinking, I'm catching that common in the morning. I've done, rather than doing what I've done for the last 3 weeks, a rig in the middle of the pond on pre-bait, how it always comes out. I'm gonna go for it in the edge. And lots of liners all night, thinking they're crazy. Lots of maggots in May. Probably not the best thing to do with the silvers and whatnot. But I'd actually plugged a boilie with chopped up maggots because of the craze and the nuisance species. Then I drilled it out, plugged it with chopped up maggots so it smelt like a maggot, plugged that with a bit of foam so it was critically balanced and the chopped up maggot couldn't escape, if you like, and tipped it with 2 fake maggots so I couldn't get fucked up by the craze and the little ones, the little fish in the lake. Next morning I'm looking out in the open water spot, a fish shows. I'm like, oh my God, here we go. It's happening on that rod. And I thought, right, it was 4 a.m. I thought, right, quickly put my head down for another 10 minutes. And as I'd done that, the left-hand rod, which is in the edge where I'd seen the common a couple of weeks before, maybe he'd lived in there sulking for a month or felt more comfortable in there. But I'd followed my gut for the first time that year on the lake. And in following my gut, which has only cemented to follow, your head, your gut, and your heart, rather than, more my head and more my heart and my gut. My heart, because I love doing that style of fishing, and my gut, because it told me to do that. I followed my head, and I went in the middle of the pond. This time, I'm not doing that. And the rod ripped off, and full compression. I couldn't believe it, because I thought it was the other rod that was going to go, and it really scrapped, and it's not known for scrapping. And a common popped up. I couldn't get it in the net. It was one of them ones. It was clearly the big, and it went on another surge. This lake's one of the snaggiest lakes I've ever fished, by the way, and far snaggier than the Leather Pit, which was incredibly snaggy. I'm fishing 60-pound snag leader and the thinking angler's braid, which is like rope, because if I'm I'm landing that fucker. And rods under the water, 13-footer. So I've got 13 foot underneath the snags, if you like. I've managed to get it out, and it was the big common. It was 42.2, I think it was. But yeah, it was from on my birthday pretty much to catch a fish that I never felt close to until the night before, or on my birthday even. And it was just nice to sort of cement that further. That listen to my gut, listen to my heart, and the head is sort of secondary in a sense. It was just more of that. I'd felt a feeling similar to the others, not quite as good, I'll be honest, but similar to the other fish I'd explained earlier, but without the water itself. It was a club water with a high turnaround of anglers. Wicked fish in there. Some proper anglers had fished for that fish and caught it. Plenty have failed, but at the same time, I did it on my own terms again, which I know now. Keep going on your own terms, mate. So yeah, there you go. That was the big common that I showed you earlier, Sam.
I'm looking at it now, mate. Yeah, this is Lee Valley, right?
Yeah, that's where a lot of the wintry shots with the lovely mirrors. It's sort of it's that water.
They are
wicked.
Like that, obviously the common is awesome, but those mirrors as well, like they're some special old fish, aren't they?
That bald one's lovely, but the crinkly-tailed, sort of scattered lin, almost a fully, that's a special one, it's dead now, but
that's with like what I call the devil tail.
That's it. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, I'm gobsmacked by that one. It was probably a bigger buzz than the common, to be honest with you. Again, it was in the edge. I'd lost one. My first fish I lost. And then after that, that's it. 60-pound leaders, braid. I'm putting sticks on my reel handle. So if that rod's coming out of the butt grip, there's sticks everywhere holding them in. It was sort of real hit and hold stuff. And it's the stuff that I love. It's what I like doing. I'm not really a free on a spot kind of bloke. I remember seeing Gaz Fairham down Sandhurst. I had nowhere to fish shortly after my heart operation. And I'd had a chat with him and whatever, and I was opposite him. And I was trying to do this free rod on a spot stuff. And I must have looked like the biggest plonker in the world, because I cracked off on a spom. I just couldn't do it, And this is what I think you've got to play to your strengths in your angling. And it's something that I feel like, it's only cemented year by year. So, that's it's something that I wouldn't say I've learned recently, but something that it carries on sort of telling me when I lose a little bit of faith, I guess.
It's absolutely right, mate. But I suppose the thing is, you're never going to learn unless you put yourself through it, are you? That's the thing. I'm not saying that you should be able to fish through on a spot. I'm not that kind of guy. I definitely can't. Tram track them, they call it, don't they?
It's a skill within itself, isn't it?
Oh, mate, I can't do that shit. But if I felt like that is the way I have to go, I would have to do it. I'd learn. Yeah, you got to do it, haven't you?
Yeah,
you got to do it. Yeah, definitely,
100%. I've if I happen to fish a water where that is the way, then I've got some learning to do.
Yeah, ditto, mate.
Hopefully, it never happens, because it's not for me. But yeah, Tom Maker, for example, one of the best anglers out there, because he can do what some of the what Terry Ann can't do, or whoever pick whoever. He's an unbelievable angler. might seem one-dimensional to some people, but I'm sure there's so much more that goes into his fishing than we understand. And his results clearly show they're better than mine. So, yeah. But everybody does.
It's different. Like we were talking on the phone earlier today, weren't we? It's different types of anglers and different sort of subsets of the hobby, isn't it? You know,
certainly.
Like it's yeah, you just like, I think sometimes it's good to look out of your own sort of section and like look onto other areas, and you definitely learn, don't you?
100%, yeah, without a doubt. And you know, we're all the day you stop learning, sort of the day you may as well give up, I guess. But yeah, I'm all up for learning something new if I have to. There are big carp waters, fairly low stock, where 3 on a spot works very well. So
yeah,
one day I might have to give it a go.
Yeah, there we go. We've covered so much. There's something I got to cover on this podcast, if that's all right, if you're all right for time.
Yep.
It's your artistic streak. So
yep.
Like hasn't come up yet, but you actually did the drawings for Kevin Nash's, one of his more recent books, didn't you? Long time ago now.
Yes.
But
yeah.
In your years, anyway.
Yes. Yeah. A long time for me. You know, I've done. I'm a different person since I've done that book. But
like talk, just run if you're all right for time, or if you need to go for a first or whatever, that's fine. But run us through that story, how it came about, what it was like, and just sort of take us through that whole trip.
Well, it's a little bit of a backlog, I guess. I mean, I've recently started posting some bits on social media, and the reason for that is you know, in a sense, it's a bit of fun, I guess. But you know, I love my artwork. I do have an art page, which is it's nothing to do with fishing, but also I'd love to go back to what I did when I was a kid, which is my art. I paint and I draw now most days if I can. Sometimes I'm up till 2 a.m. It's the same as the fishing. If I'm not painting, I'm fishing, and if I'm not fishing, I'm painting. And I'm doing one at 1 a.m, or I'm doing the other. You know, whether it's walking, baiting, painting, varnishing a canvas, whatever it might be. But they're my two loves in life, and they give me a similar sort of feeling inside that work or whatever can't give you, and even family can't give you. You know, everything gives you. It's the variety of life, I guess. But I started posting on social media recently. Sort of, I want to put some artwork up once I've sort of put a few fish up and got a little bit of attention, I guess, which is something that I didn't think I was going to do, but it's just made sense at the minute because I work 6 days a week. I've got a family, and maybe I want to steer my career. I'm done with what I've been doing for a long time, and maybe if I can do 1 day less a week cutting hair, I'm a barber. It's long days. It's 12-hour days. I get home at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. It was 9 o'clock on Wednesday this week, and I want a bit more time with my family. And also, if you're good at something, why not do it? So that's something that I want to get back into, and I've done a lot of time this year painting. But to sort of go back, while I was on Frogmore, there was an absolute fruitcake on there called Ditch. And Ditch, he'd fished, he caught the lever. I used to see him fishing, and he won't mind me saying this, but he was a little bit of a rude boy, is probably the wrong word, but he had all his mates down there with him. They were smoking and whatnot. They were young, but he was doing it. You know, he had his mates down there on the bikes. They were a bit of a handful, but they didn't cause too much trouble down there. They were good blokes, great to chat to. They helped me out in many ways. But he was fishing this lake, and he was so driven, and he caught the lever, and then he went on to dot himself around the country and caught plenty of other big fish. And now he lives in Spain on the River Ebro. He loves it. I don't know anyone who loves it as much as him. But I met him on there, and he ended up getting a job as in the office with Kevin Nash before the social media days, as I guess Kevin's sort of right-hand man. There was him, Alan Blair there, Reedy. I can't remember who else was there, but I remember them three being there when I went up there. Anyway, at the time I was poaching a park lake. It was a non-fishing lake. I'd had a 27-pound common out there on a bit of bread. And while I was there, I got a phone call from him. He's like, "You're right, mate. It's Ditch. You all right? How you doing?" He's never rang me before, you know. I've fished with him plenty of times, but he's never rang me before. It's Ditch. We're in a bit of a pickle. I've got my boss's book, you know, Kevin Nash's book. We've got an illustrator. He's done the lot. The book needs to be out for September, but the illustrations are shockingly bad. We need someone else on it. Do you want to do it? At the time, I was drawing carp for people, you know, 20 quid a picture. And I'd done a few for a few big carp boys who fish Raisbury and wherever else, you know. So I put them on Facebook and got a little bit of not a following, but some sort of big blokes in the fishing world, if you like, had asked me to do some for them. And I wasn't amazing at it, but anyway, I said, yeah, fuck it, why not? I just started doing my A-levels at the time, A-level exams at the time for the first year. And I threw it all out the window. I had a sketchbook that was empty. And I had to, because of this book, I ended up doing it all the night before. Still got an A, so that was all good. But I had to fill up the sketchbook for the exam in 24 hours. I didn't sleep. But it was worth it because I got the call from Ditch. He said, "Can you do the book?" I was supposed to be doing the coursework. I had 2 weeks. I didn't have a computer. So I went round my granddad's house. Luckily for me, my nan and granddad lived 2 doors away and they drove. So they were handy for me to get to fishing and whatever. So I've gone down there, got the computer up, and he's ringing me up. "Right, Jake, for this chapter, I need a picture of Kev as an 8-year-old holding a roach." And I had 20 minutes, you know, we had 2 weeks to do the front cover and 30 illustrations. And, you know, home life at the time, I'll be honest, it was a very strange place. So it was so hard to get all this stuff done. But I just had to do it. It was an opportunity that I couldn't turn down. And done that. Right, map of Harefield. Can you do it within the hour? Yep, no worries. Watercolour of Harefield. Bosh that one over. The next one is, I think it's called Silver End, an Essex water. Yeah, no worries. Yeah. So yeah, that one, the Snake Pit. Obviously, we all know the Snake Pit. Fucking maps, and then it was, can you draw Kev's Doberman attacking an explorer? No worries. This, that, whatever else. Anyway, we've done all of them, and I got a mate of mine to drive me down to Clacton, which is a couple of hours away, in the sort of coastal Essex. Bit of a shithole, I know that, because I stayed down there on a holiday once. It's the most most economically deprived place in the UK, Jaywick next door. Anyway, Kevin Nash's house was beautiful, by the way. But got to his house, and he was a funny bloke. He didn't look too chuffed. He had all the drawings in his book, and he went, "Have you done the front cover?" I said, No, I didn't know I had to. He's like, "Can you do it?" He said, "Can you do it now?" So there and then, I drew probably 50% of the front cover in front of him. And then I got home, spent another hour on it, and the front cover was done. I think they had 2 weeks to get the images off of me, edit them, get them in the book, and get the book to the printers. So 70, and there was a write-up in the Angler's Mail with a special mention for me. It was amazing at the time, you know. It was so good because art is my passion, you know. And I didn't do the best job I could have done if I had unlimited time. However, just like my fishing over the years, I didn't have unlimited time, and I did the best I could. So for that reason, I'm proud of what I did. And to be fair to him, he said Kev sorted me out big time. Free bait for a very long time, free gear. I got pretty much a free trip to the Ebro out of it. And what else? Yeah, he'd done me a book. He'd signed it and gave me a thanks. And then the write-up in the Angler's Mail and everything else. They'd set up a little business for me so I could draw carp for people. They'd done a lot for me, you know, and they didn't even know me. So although it was pressure, it was an amazing thing to do at 17 years old. And I'm better at it now. I'd love to do another one, you know. I'm doing a few bits for a few anglers through putting stuff on Instagram recently. I'm doing a few bits now, which is lovely. But I think for me, that was a different kind of buzz, if you like. Then don't like that word buzz, but a different kind of buzz to what catching a carp is. And yeah, it was something that I remember forever. I remember the sort of the good that them boys did. Alan Blair was a lovely bloke. I didn't know who he was at the time, but everyone in the office had given me a confidence boost in my work as well, which, you know, it lives with you forever, you know. So it was a lovely thing to do, and I'd love to do more of it. So let's hope that one day I'll do a bit more of it.
Yeah, definitely. It sort of mimics your like your early years in carp fishing Frogmore. You sort of thrown in at the deep end with Frogmore, weren't you? And the same thing with this. Like, you got a deadline. You're doing it for Kevin Nash of all people, and he's sort of looking over your shoulder as you're doing the front cover. I mean, it is like throwing in at the deep end, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
It's probably
definitely.
the best way, mate. Probably the best way.
For me, it is. You know, if I'm doing something, it has to be totally for. It's something that I've learned recently. It's got to be for me and for no one else. And you know, I've got and if it's for me and me only and only my thing, if you like, then I will put everything into it. And if I am doing something that really does sort of, I'm on a wavelength with, I will go all in with it. And yeah, that goes for the fishing, and long may it continue. And that goes for the artwork, and long may that continue. And hopefully, yeah, bigger and better things for that, because sort of it's a passion of mine that I've found recently. I didn't, doing that book, after that, I got a proper job, if you like. And 10 years I've been doing something that isn't really me. I'm doing it every day pretty much. And I'm ready to, you know, and there's always opportunities out there. So I'm ready to go and do something different now. And hopefully it might not be in the art world or the fishing world, but the skills that I've got from these two things, whether it's being a little bit more self-aware than I used to be, whether it's, you know, being creative, whatever it might be, that's the next thing for me, you know, and that, it's only good for me, my family, fishing time, you know, because we all want more fishing time, don't we? You know, so, you know,
thing, mate.
That's it. Yeah, I guess we just see where it goes from here. But yeah, apart from that, I'm enjoying where I'm at now. You know, I've just joined a new syndicate. It's only the second ever syndicate I've ever fished. So yeah, hopefully good times on there. But yeah, it's low stock. It's 30 acres, big gravel pit. So I'm really looking forward to getting my teeth stuck into there. My first session's next week, June the 16th, 2 nights, which is a big thing for me. And yeah, everything's just seemed to sort of be sorting itself out right now. So long may that continue.
Mate, maybe you'll have to come back on, and once you conquered that pit, you have to come back on with your other tales, maybe. If just leading on from the your artwork, if people want to check that out and look at your handiwork, where's the best place for that? Is it Instagram, somewhere else?
So this is something that I need to get on and start putting a little bit more effort into the social media, which I haven't done for a long time. But the art page is Jake Hughes Art. So Jake. I've got to spell it because everyone gets it wrong. Hughes Art. One word, no commas or anything like that. No funny. Can't think of the word. But yeah. So that's the art page.
Sorry, mate. Sorry, Jake Hughes Art. .com or? No,
Jake Hughes Art is an Instagram page. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, mate.
Yeah. No problem. I didn't explain it very well. So yeah, Jake Hughes Art on Instagram. I've got an Etsy page. There's a link on my Instagram fishing Instagram page and on my art page, which hasn't got loads on there, but I've only just started doing it. January I started painting, and I've sold 17 since January, so 17 paintings. So it's going really well. I've got a gallery coming, which I'm sure the carpers won't be interested in because it's not fishing related. I've got a gallery coming in July, so it'll be like an exhibition of all the recent bits that I've completed. I sent you a few bits earlier, so it's sort of psychedelic art, some crazy stuff.
It's fucking mental. I'm looking at your page now with the sheep, going down by the water and then the sky and the mountains.
Yeah, it's a
Jeez.
reflection of my perception of how the world is.
Yeah, no, I got, mate, honestly, I'm not saying it, I got that as soon as I fucking looked at it.
Yeah, like, if I can just give a quick explanation, you've got, and I'm not saying we're all sheep, because I'm just as much of a follower of where we are in this realm, if you like, than everyone. But, I feel like the painting, the big black painting that I sent you earlier, it's a big oil painting. It's about 1.5 meters by 1.5 meters. It's on my wall, actually. But I mean, that one there is we're sort of scraping the last dregs of what there is to explore, eat, fashion, whatever, everything, all the sort of sectors of life. But I believe the magic's in the sky, and that's why the sky is so magnificent in there. And that's what I love about fishing. You get the sun, the creator of everything, in my eyes. You've got the moon, which affects every living creature's behaviour for whatever reason. We can't work it out why. That's why they call them lunatics. That's why Monday is called Monday, because it's moon day. Sunday is the day of the sun. Saturday is Saturn day. Thursday is the day of Thor. There's links to it all, and that's what goes into my art. It's very deep. But yeah, the magic's in the sky. You've got the northern lights, the stars. The stars align with certain pyramids at certain times of year, and there's all sorts going on up there. And that's why I love the fishing. You get a clear sky, just like in the Ebro when I was there. Clear sky, dead quiet, no light pollution. You look up in the sky, and I know Tommy Bishop, he loves his photographs of the sky, but me, I ain't got time to photograph it. I'm staring up there, and if there's fish showing in the night, I'm looking in the sky, because that's where the magic happens. So that's where my art is. That's where my fishing is. It's all about, for me, what's up there. And I think that there's more to it than we'll ever know. And I like that. So yeah, that's
magic, mate. That is magic. You mentioned pyramids as well. I'm guessing you mean the Egyptian pyramids.
Yeah.
The geometry it blows your mind, doesn't it? Like,
blows your mind.
It does. I won't go into it, but just like look it up, the angles that they're at, and just man, it's fucking crazy. Surely
enough, and a more civilized and more what's the word? Advanced. Possibly we've devolution. We've devolved since then, I believe, because what they were capable of. We're not at the pinnacle of humanity right now. I mean, we're all chasing carp. How I know we do it for our reasons, but these guys were aligning pyramids from Sudan to Egypt and right the way down to South America. I think we've lost a lot of the magic, a lot of our magic as beings, if you like, in the current times with technology and whatever else. And again, that's why we go fishing. I think we get a little bit of that magic back, and we realise what we really are. And that's why I do it, and that's why I don't give up doing it, because the morality of it, the fact that we're using fish meals, which is decimating, well, not us, but the industry, not the bait industry, but the big fishing is not good. We're crushing up loads of dried fish to catch a fish. All these the morality of all of that, it doesn't always sit well with me. But if I can feel a little bit of that magic, a little bit of why we're here, perhaps, or there are things that we can't understand, and our tiny little brains maybe can't comprehend until maybe the moment of death, or whatever it might be, I will carry on fishing, and that's where the animal meets the animal again. And I'll carry on painting, because for me, that's what it's all about. These are good beers, by the way. I think they must have something special in them.
I like it, mate. That's going to be bouncing around my head for a while. The animal meets the animal. Fucking love that.
Yeah, it's certainly resonates with me, without getting too deep. But I've enjoyed. I was pretty nervous coming onto this, because it's not something I've ever done before. It's a bit of a bit of a funny one, but I'll tell you what, it's been good fun speaking to you both. I've listened to quite a few of them. They're I think you're both doing a wicked job, and I'd love to get back on one day.
Yeah, definitely, mate. You'll be welcome with open arms, I'm sure. This will go down well. I just know it will. Is there anything else you wanna cover on this podcast?
I mean, there was other bits that I could have spoke about. However, they probably should have gone before what I have spoken about, because I just don't feel that I will do them any justice, because I don't think that they're as good a story as maybe some of the others. And I'm not saying that I'm a best storyteller in the world, but I know that they're just not as good. You know, they didn't make me feel a certain way, and if that's the case, I won't explain it as well. So I think maybe for another time. But if there's anything that you want to talk about, I'm happy. But if not, yeah, it's been good.
I think that's like you've done such a good job of taking us through the journey of these different adventures of yours. It's like, if we try and do something else, it almost spoils what's just come. So I think I'm good with it. I mean, Pete, Pete, you've been very quiet. Is there anything that Jake sort of touched upon that you wanted to expand on at all?
You know, I think Jake sort of summed that up perfectly, like you guys have just said. I don't think we should probably cover it now, but if Jake comes on again, we could definitely talk about his bled fishing, because I'd like to hear about that at some time.
Yeah.
But I think it's been a fantastic podcast, and there's the podcast where me and Sam don't have to speak a lot. Is generally a good sign, you know. I think you can tell a great story, mate, and I think people will really, really enjoy what you've had to say.
Wicked. Well, yeah. Cheers for having me on. I know it's probably something that you're not you're not used to. Some random bloke pops up, but yeah, I really appreciate it. And it's been a good crack. So, yeah. Cheers. Great to speak to you both, and yeah, we'll catch up soon.
No, it's a pleasure. Cheers, Jake. We appreciate it, man.
Wicked.